Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to IDG Live. Today we have an open Q&A. I've got a lot of questions, obviously, about the last episode of House of the Dragon, episode 4, which was amazing. But we've also got a few questions about the wider world of A Song of Ice and Fire. We've got some questions about Lord of the Rings. As always, with these kind of things, we're going to be dotting around a little bit, but I will try and do them in that order. So first of all, we're going to be looking at House of the Dragon. Then we're going to go to A Song of Ice and Fire. Then we'll do Lord of the Rings and anything else people want to talk about. So that's the general order of things. I think the only thing to say in advance is the usual spoiler warning that we have to do when a TV show is on. Book spoilers are fine. The books have been out for a while. We'll happily talk about what's going on in the books, what is going to happen soon in the books, which will probably happen soon on the TV show, but they have changed things around a little bit, so we can't be 100% sure. TV show spoilers are not okay. We will talk about everything that's happened so far. We will talk about anything official going forward, trailers, that kind of stuff, but not any leaks or anything like that. So if you want to stay spoiler free, this is absolutely fine for you. So let's get straight into this with some questions from my patrons. And I wanted to start with this one from Lady Pushkins, who says, "Good evening, Robert and Dan the dog. Can we just have a moment to talk about how emotional House of the Dragon episode 4 was? I hope everyone is okay. I was a blubbering wreck and it really got to me. Even seeing a clip now, I start to get a lump in my throat. Please, fandom, tell me I'm not alone in these feelings, that I do feel a bit silly knowing that it's CGI fantasy. But thank you. It will be good to be in this stream this week for some emotional support." And I think I wanted to start out with this because I felt it too. And if you're there in the chat, then feel free to sort of share your thoughts as well. I thought this was a great episode, certainly the best episode we've had in House of the Dragon season 2, right up there with I think it was episode 8 of season 1, the one with Viserys, his final episode. Really, really good drama. So I hugely appreciated it. And the way that they built it up, this isn't hugely incisive kind of analysis here, but I think let's start with just a little bit of how we reacted to the episode. They did make changes from the books. Let's not forget that, but we are working in a two canon system now. We've got a book canon, we've got a show canon, and I thought that the changes they made were really good. I thought that it worked really well, and I thought that personally, I really bought into what happened with Aegon. I really bought into what happened with Rhaenys. I even thought, and we'll get onto this in a moment, I really bought into what happened with Kristen Cole as well. So there's a lot to talk about here, but yeah, let me know in the chat. Just having a quick flick through the comments. I'm really going to miss Audrey Rager saying I'm really going to miss Eve Best. She was amazing. I would completely agree. And Ursula T just saying blubbering. Yeah, absolutely. Lady Pushkins, I'm hugging all you geeks. And then we've got Sorek saying, I was sad for Sunfire. He was like a puppy with no idea what was going to happen. April May saying, I love, love, love how they showed Maelys. I love that so much. And Igrit Weirwood saying, love that look back that Maelys gave her. Yeah, there was, I mean, when you next look back at it, if you missed it, so Maelys the dragon looked back at Rhaenys just when they both knew it was over. And that bond was strong. So yeah, I wanted to start with this not as an insightful bit of analysis, but just as a reaction, just to say that was great, wasn't it? And so yeah, round of applause there to the writers and the showrunner there. Rassler Good day, Robert. I hope you and Dan the dog are well. We are, thank you. Not really a question, but an observation. The scene between Alicent and Aegon really showcased just how little she knows and understands her children. Her approach was only going to go one way, considering Aegon's personality. But more importantly, it showcased her own hypocrisy, as she notes, she ruled, but she never made any attempt to teach and prepare Aegon for rule. Now insults him when he's not ready. Yeah, I think this is an interesting point because that interaction was really important for how this episode went. Aegon was humbled, almost bullied in his own small council by Aemond, and he kind of hung around while everybody else was doing these discussing tactics and things. Actually, if you listen in, you will find that we're focusing in on what Aegon is getting bored, but what the people there are talking about, what the rest of the small council are talking about, actually is money, finances. How much money do they have left? How can they pay for all of these cattle and sheep that Vhagar is eating? That's an issue. I thought this was really well done, that the drip feeding this kind of financial constraints issue all the way through this season, and that is only going to be growing as we go through to the end of the season and particularly into next season. So keep an eye on those conversations that are happening when we're looking at something else and people are talking away in the background, because that's when they drop a huge amount of the background information, the things we need to know about what's going on in the wider world. But so Aegon emerged from that and he got bored, and he went and he talked to his mum, which is entirely understandable. But I thought this worked really well because we got Aegon and we knew exactly where his mindset was. He was frustrated, he was bored, he felt belittled, he felt just pushed to one side. And he goes and talks to his mum, and what's her mindset? Well, we have to remember where she is after last episode. After last episode, she learned that the last words that she thought she heard and understood from Viserys, her husband, the last words that said, "Yeah, I want Aegon to inherit." Actually, she completely misinterpreted them. So that's her mindset, and she's there. And if you remember at the end of it, she just said, "It's too late, Rhaenyra." She is now of the mindset that she made a mistake, and her mistake has led to the entire continent going into this devastating civil war. Now, as an aside, do keep an eye on the reading that she's doing, because that's really happened this last episode. We had the episode where she and Rhaenyra met, and then Rhaenyra is talking about the Song of Ice and Fire, and then after that, suddenly she's there in Aegon's chambers. Where are all these books? What did you do with the books? And she's sitting in her own chambers reading history books. And Laris is saying, since when have you been interested in Targaryen history? So she is definitely digging into these books. Almost certainly, I think, as a reaction to that conversation with Rhaenyra, almost certainly what's happening here is she is trying to figure out what is going on with the Song of Ice and Fire. Maybe she will find something. Maybe that will change her perspective and where she's coming from on this war. So that's a slight digression, because where we're at now is that she's in the mindset of it doesn't matter, really doesn't matter, because now we can't stop it. The war's happening, lots of people are going to die, and then someone's going to sit on the Iron Throne at the end of it. And so when Aegon's there going, "Oh, they're not listening to me," she's just like, "Yeah, just, you're not the military mind. Just let the other people deal with it." Just sit back. Because, and this is a projection, psychological projection, she is in the mindset of that's all going to happen. It's now out of my hands. It's now out of my control. And she's pushed that now onto her son and said, there's nothing you can do. Let other people deal with this. You're not, I mean, and she's probably right that he's not the military genius here. Not that Team Green seem to have many military geniuses, it has to be said, but she's probably right that Aegon isn't the best person to be leading the war effort. And that is just the last straw in this series of things which are pushing him towards going out to Rook's Rest. Lady Pushkin saying, I was screaming out, just go home. Northern Tommy saying, I actually felt a bit for Aegon. You can see why he acts out. Yeah, a lot of people have said that, actually. I've had a few comments. We'll get onto this in just a moment, I think, in some of my questions. Shelley J saying, or asking, I'm guessing that we will discuss this, but did you think that Aemond went in for the kill when he blasted them with dragonfire? I don't have an exact question on this, so I'm going to put this. I'll tell you what I think in just one second. But if you're here in the live chat, could you just say yes or no to this one? Let's do it as simple as that. If I were clever, I would put up a little poll here, but I don't know how to do that. Yes, Aemond meant to kill Aegon. No, he did not. It's all a big misunderstanding. So yes, for he did mean to kill him. No, for he did not. And I'll read through them in just one moment. I'll take my glasses off so I can't be influenced by what you're saying in the chat. So I think they have left this deliberately open. There's a clear echo that they've got going on here between Daemon and Aemond. We've seen this so many times. Does Daemon really want the throne for himself? Is that why he's wanting? And I think they're now playing this up with Aemond as well. Does he deep inside want it? We know that he thinks he's better suited to it than Aegon, and maybe he is. But does he actively, would he go as far as to actually kill him? I think on the sword thing, I've not got a question on this, so I'll talk about this now. At the very end of the episode, if you remember, he had his sword out, and then Crispin Cole appears, and then he puts his sword in. I think when you watch that back for a second time, I've watched this now 3 times, when you watch it back the second and third time, you will think, yeah, he was putting his sword away. Was he putting his sword away because he saw the dagger and thought, actually, I'm going to use the dagger instead? Perhaps. We don't know. But I think they were deliberately leaving that slightly uncertain. If I had to sort of stick my neck out on this one, what I would say was he knew that he was doing Dracarys straight in Aegon's face. There's no way around that. He definitely knew that that was what was happening, and he knew that that would lead to him falling to the ground and probably dying. And he was okay with that. So this was the third time that he kind of betrayed Aegon in that episode. The first one was he was plotting behind his back. The second one was that when he saw Aegon going overhead, he could have just immediately got Vhagar up, and he said, no, Vhagar, wait. And did you say, I loved that, very random, but I loved that moment when Vhagar just put his head back down and like that. It's exactly what Dan, my dog, does when he just goes, oh, I'm not having a walk. Okay. And that was a really good kind of feel to it. But he was saying, no, wait. And he knew that what would then happen was that Sunfire and Meleys would get into a fight. And then he'd come in later. So let's I'm going to quickly flick back and see. So I said, put in the chat here, yes, Aemond did mean to kill Aegon. No, he did not. Um, so we've got yes, yes, no, yes, no, yes, 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 yes. Andrew Kay saying, I like the somewhat sympathetic Aegon II portrayal, while highlighting the flaws as well. Lots of nuance. Yes, yes, yes. So yes, I would say that probably. Oh, just this isn't scientific research, but I would say 70 to 80% of the people in watching this live in the chat say that yes, he did intend to kill him at that point. So I think that kind of chimes with me. He definitely knew that if he did that, there was a good chance that Aegon would die, at the very least. Whether the intentionality was there for him to say, I am trying to kill him, that bit I don't know. Agree. Weirwood saying, I don't think Aemond would have tried to kill Aegon if it meant losing a fight. He enjoyed the fact that Aegon was in the way. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Let's go to a question from Tripster36 saying, any timeline on when the Robert Rhaegar and Lyanna and all that videos will be back on your channel? Yes-ish. Slight digression here, but I'm going to start dropping a few of them back. So I'm actually working one of them. I was working on it earlier today. What I am wanting to do is hold back those videos that might be affected by what we get in the stage play. I've got some questions about the stage play in a moment, which I will cover then. But for those who don't know, there is going to be a stage play about the tourney at Harrenhal. And the latest we've got in terms of updates from George R. R. Martin literally today or maybe yesterday, he's done a lot of blog posts in the last 2 or 3 days, is that he's looking at some point in 2025, so hopefully in the next year. When that happens, I'm expecting to get a lot more information which will impact on a lot of those videos that I did that are centered around what happens at the tourney at Harrenhal. So those ones I will hold on to, but I will try and drop back in a few of the other ones which are less centered on the tourney at Harrenhal, and you'll see them appearing here and there. The one I'm doing at the moment is a slightly more tangential one, which is about Daenerys, the house with the red door and the lemon tree. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, absolutely fine. This is quite a deep cut into A Song of Ice and Fire lore, but it's quite an important one. Right, let's go to Diego Godoy saying, Hola, Robert. Hola to you. When did the tradition of the Targaryens speaking Valyrian get lost? It was so cool to see how fluent Aemond was in it, even if we never got to see Viserys teaching him. Thank you. Yeah, I thought this was really interesting. So we can assume, and the short answer is we don't know exactly, but we can assume that way back in time, during the Valyrian freehold, the Targaryens spoke Old Valyrian. That was just their language. That's what they spoke. Then they came over to live on Dragonstone for 100 years. And probably at that point, they had to become bilingual because, yes, there were some other Valyrian families around. There were the Velaryons, there's House Celtigar, but if they wished to talk to, and we know that they did, if they wished to talk to other houses in Westeros, then they weren't going to be speaking Valyrian to them. So at that point, they largely became bilingual. When the invasion happened, we do not hear of them talking Valyrian hugely. So the kind of implication that we have is that from the moment that Aegon conquered, they used 2 languages. One language for talking to the people around them, and one language when they were just talking to their close family, which was Valyrian. And I think they captured this really well in particularly season 1 of House of the Dragon, which was when two of the Targaryens wished to speak to each other in a way that nobody else would understand. They would talk Valyrian. Particularly, we got this with Daemon and Rhaenyra. I think this showed us the closeness of their relationship from quite early on, was the fact that they would talk in Old Valyrian to each other, and other people around them wouldn't necessarily understand what they're talking about. Now, what happened in the build up to the Dance of the Dragons is that we get basically a splitting of House Targaryen into two groups. One group, which was Rhaenyra and Daemon, and they kept up the traditions of teaching their children Old Valyrian. We get a brief glimpse of Jacaerys learning, and then we go over to the Viserys' family with Alicent, and it seems like they were more learning about the faith of the Seven and things like that. So it makes sense that it's just those people who were particularly interested in it who would learn it very well. And yeah, I loved the scene. I think we all love the scene when you get Aemond, who's there, and he talks in High Valyrian. Now, who else around that table would have known what he was talking about? Probably Grand Maester Orwyle, possibly Larys. The others, probably not. But this was him talking direct to his brother, and his brother knew that and replied back in a way which was obviously faltering. He was not paying attention in that class. It did not matter to him. And what that tells us is that his father and the other people around him never told him this was important. This also plays across to, if you look at the dragon battle that we have, the Battle of Rook's Rest, you get Rhaenys and Aemond, who are both largely talking, not uniquely, but largely talking Valyrian to their dragons. And then you get Aegon, who's there like, go on, Sunfire, faster, attack. It's only when he gets to, like, say, Dracarys, which is, now we all know the word Dracarys. But other than that, he's talking just in common tongue to the dragon. Now, there's no reason to think that the dragon didn't understand it, but it's indicative of the fact that that isn't a natural tongue to him. Let's go to Rassler. In the sneak peek for next episode, we see Jace appear to go to the Riverlands to recruit an army. Do you think he will go to make contact with Daemon and find out what he's doing, or will he be operating independently of Daemon and in opposition with to Daemon's efforts? So we don't know, but it's probably worth pointing out or clarifying exactly what the situation is as far as the Black Council are concerned. So Rhaenyra has said he has to go his own way. And that's where the rest of the Black Council are. What does that mean? What it means is that they are still kind of expecting him to be on Team Black. They're still kind of expecting him to report in. They're asking. It's not like they're giving up on him. They're not forgetting him and saying, "Oh well, whatever he's doing doesn't matter." They're saying, "Have we had word yet? What's going on with Daemon? Is he doing anything?" They know that Daemon's just going off and doing his own thing, but they also kind of think that he's on their side. The conversation that we have with Rhaenys and Corlys is quite interesting because they are saying the unsaid, is or asking those questions. Is he gonna declare for himself? No, he's not going to. but they're thinking it. And so this is where we're at. And if we have this as a Team Black context, Rhaenyra is not going to go there and sort of chase after her husband. That I think that much is clear, and I think that it's also similarly quite clear she's not going to like send her son, but who's not Daemon's son, off to him either. So she's now in a situation where she's going, okay, we do need to have an army, so she's going to have to send people out, but. Largely, they're gonna leave Damon to his own devices. I think they're not going to try and forcibly bring him back. There's nobody. Everyone knows this. Nobody could forcibly bring Damon back to do something he did not wish to do, and he's decided he's doing this on his own. So there's no point in trying to bring him back. Johnny Seriani saying, "Good morrow, Robert. Good morrow to you too, sir. How do you think the showrunners will portray the death of Syrax after the storming of the Dragon Pit? Will we see a giant swordsman?" Okay, so this is one of those things which is, in terms of the show, probably a season and a half away. This is the storming of the Dragon Pit, so spoilers. The not Daenerys, Rhaenyra will take it. And the reason why, if you ever get caught up saying Daenerys when you mean Rhaenyra, and I'm not the only person who does this, I know lots of people do this, it's because the show were deliberately echoing the two of those characters. But anyway, Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, but it just goes wrong. The people rise up against her. We'll get into all of the details, I'm sure, nearer the time. This is going to be season 3, I suspect. The people will rise up against her. And we get the storming of the Dragon Pit. The people do not like dragons. They don't want dragons anymore. They've seen the damage, literal damage that dragons do to everyone. And led by this kind of religious rabble rouser called the Shepherd, they storm the Dragon Pit. There are some dragons there. 5 dragons die. Joffrey, her youngest son by her first husband, slash Harwin Strong, decides he's not having it. He's been told he's been aged down a bit in the show. It'd be interesting to see how they do this on the show. So he was a little bit older in the books, but he decides, you know what, I'm not having this. I'm going to go and stop them. And he jumps on his mother's dragon to ride Syrax to the Dragon Pit. Perhaps we don't know. We don't know. Fire and Blood doesn't tell us what the motivation was. Was he just hoping to sort of like fly a little bit across and then jump off and then get on his own dragon? Was he going to stay on Syrax all the time? We're not 100% sure. But he gets onto Syrax, flies off across King's Landing, and then halfway across Syrax, we're told, kind of like throws off Joffrey. Joffrey goes falling to the ground. And it's quite tragic, really. But we're told the Maces in Fire and Blood, the Maces just kind of like report that this happens and say, this is what it's like with dragons. They won't allow somebody else to ride them. When they've got a bond with somebody, they won't allow anyone else to ride them. So poor Joffrey didn't quite realize that and dies. Syrax, however, has now got over to the Dragon Pit and would have kind of stayed circling around above and just like breathing fire down on all of the people who are rioting. And that would have been quite an effective strategy. But Syrax doesn't do that. Syrax lands. At which point, and Syrax is killed. But when we have conflicting reports of how, Was Cyrax swarmed by a whole load of people? Possibly. Was Cyrax killed by a single hero coming up and attacking it, stabbing it in the eye? Possibly. What you here, Russell, I think, are referring to is the story that got recorded into history, which is the shepherd, who is this kind of religious rabble-rouser, suddenly gets taken over by the spirit. It's not very clear. The spirit of the warrior grows to be this, which is one of the aspects of the Faith of the Seven, grows into this giant with a sword and slays the last dragon. Did that happen? We don't know. Was this a good story that got passed down by bards for generations? Definitely. This is a good way of ending that Dragon Pit story. This is the Faith of the Seven defeating the dragons. So will we see that? I mean, I think if you'd asked me 3-4 weeks ago, I'd have said no. They'll just have this as quite a kind of low fantasy. The dragons are all there, and just like a mob takes them over one after the other, and dragons can't escape because they're in the dragon pit, and the mob wins. But season 2 has been a lot more magic-y, it has to be said, particularly in Harrenhal, but the kind of the magical feel of the show has gone up a notch. It would not surprise me if they create a magical element to what happens there in the Dragon Pit. I'm not saying that's what they will do. I'm just saying it will not surprise me. So I'm still probably saying no. I don't think that they're going to say, here is definitive proof that the Faith of the Seven is right. I don't think that will happen. But perhaps they will give a slightly more magical interpretation than we previously had thought. Alex Bryce saying, when do you think House of the Dragon will end? Aegon's death, the Hour of the Wolf, the regency of Aegon III. I hope we get the Hour of the Wolf, as it's so interesting. Yeah, so I mean, I've talked about this a few times, but my general take is that I don't think they're going to do the regency. I think that they will probably end it just after the Hour of the Wolf. Now, I'm going to just read out here I think this is a good way to end this. Cregan Stark comes down. I have many thoughts on Cregan Stark. I'm not going to go into them right now, but he comes down and absolutely bosses the situation in King's Landing. The situation in King's Landing had been chaos. The Greens and the Blacks by this point had just pummeled each other into submission. They were there. All their armies had been destroyed. Pretty much all the dragons had gone, and Aegon II had just been poisoned. And then Cregan Stark arrives with his massive northern army. It's like, well, what do I do now? And so he just takes control. He basically takes over as Hand of the King. He says, everyone who was responsible, I'm going to try everybody who was responsible for the assassination of Aegon II, and you either go up to the wall or I will take your head off with ice. And he's just so in control of the whole situation. He also wants to continue the war. He wants to carry on with it. But this kind of coalition of the survivors sort of stop him, including Ali Blackwood, who is a great character, presumably will be appearing soon. So then we get this Cregan Stark's brief service as the hand of the uncrowned king ended the next day when he returned his chain of office to Prince Aegon. He might easily have remained king's hand for years or even claimed the regency until young Aegon came of age, but the south held no interest for him. The snows are falling in the north, he announced, and my place is in Winterfell. And I personally think that's the end of the chapter in Fire and Blood, and I think that is where they should probably end the show, House of the Dragon. After that, we get the Regency, but this is the end. The sort of the coalition of the survivors have prevented the war from carrying on. Cregan Stark has come in and done summary justice, and in a very kind of stark way, he's like said, "Okay, I don't want to be Hand of the King. I don't want to be regent. This means nothing to me. Here's all your titles. Have them back. I'm going back up north because Winterfell needs me." And that feels like the way that this could end. So if I had to guess, just to return to your question, if I had to guess where it's going to end, it's going to be there. I still think, and I might change my mind on this one in the next couple of episodes, depending on how quickly they move through this. But I still think we're looking at end of season one was the out. We know this was the death of Viserys, the outbreak of the dance. End of season two, I think they're probably still just about on track for the fall of King's Landing. Episode three, I think they're still roughly on track for the second fall of King's Landing. Season three. Season four, at the current speed, they would be on track for ending it at this point. Cregan Stark has appeared and gone away. 4 seasons done, and then they can move on. And next, I suspect after that, they will probably go to Aegon's Conquest. Let's go to a question from. I'm sure I had another question in here somewhere. Yep, Auntie Slayer. Hello, what is Daemon actually doing, and how long has it been? Seems unlike him to sit and wait around for Lord's grandsons to come and waste his time. Is an army on the way? So this is, this is a fantastic question because it does seem unlike him to just kind of like hang around. He's a man of action. But what we've seen is some time jumps. Now, this isn't just like normal TV show, oh, let's do a time jump and we'll just move forward a bit. Not much has happened, we'll just move it forward. This seems genuinely to be he doesn't know what happened. So he gets given the drink by Alys Rivers. He does that. We hear him drink it, and then the next thing he knows, he's there. Who's this Blackwood guy here? Why is he here? You asked for him to come? Oh, yeah, I did. He seems to be losing track of time. Now, all of this kind of summons the Tullys, and then that summons the Blackwoods. All of this does take time that we're not really seeing on the TV show. It'll be weeks that he's there now. It'll be weeks. What has he achieved in that time? We don't know. Is he completely at the mercy now of the Weirwood network, of whatever Alys Rivers is doing? We're not 100% sure. The whole point here is that we're supposed to be disconcerted by what's happening. We're supposed to be uncertain about exactly when we are, exactly what's happened. And Daemon should be slightly discombobulated by it all. Now, the interesting thing is in Fire and Blood, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it basically says, whatever powers Alys Rivers had, they clearly had no impact on Daemon. Here, they clearly do have an impact on him. It's just that maybe he doesn't want to admit it to anyone afterwards. Maybe um, it's not going to change the story anything anyway. But it's not 100% clear. But how long is it going to? How long has it been? Probably a few weeks. What's he doing? He's trying to gather an army. Could he go out and do it in a more proactive way? And would he normally? Probably yes. We're kind of left with the impression that the magic here has a hold on him, and he's not used to that. Lady Pushkins, do you think that Alys Rivers is giving Damon weirwood paste? Now, I've seen a lot of people wondering this, suggesting this. So Alys Rivers was clearly making something, and she was like flopping something into this pestle and mortar, grinding it up, and giving it to Damon. Is that what the Bran had, which gave him the ability to not just have random uh, sort of green dreams, but also see things through the Weirwood network? I I don't think we have enough information yet to be 100% sure, but I love the idea. I love the idea that he is um, deliberately being tested out as a potential green seer. Effectively, he's there sleeping. If you missed this I think is really important. He's on the bed that he sleeps on is made out of weirwood. So we're immediately supposed to be thinking, okay, so um, if he gets dreams, these are green dreams, these are weirwood dreams. If she gives him a weirwood paste, that is there to potentially open up his third eye and allow him to see more and to travel further. Is that what's going on? I don't think yet we've seen that. Now, I hate to burst anyone's bubble on this one, but when Bran had the Weirwood paste, it allowed him to go through the Weirwood network and see things that happened in history as they were. That's not the kind of dreams and visions that Damon's having at the moment. At the moment, he's having visions about his conscience. He, he's there um, seeing young Rhaenyra, who's accusing him of various things. That's the kind of vision that he's having right now. He's not going back and seeing what really happened in the past. He's going back and seeing, confronting the truth about how his own conscience is feeling about certain things. And Decay saying Bran is a green seer, Damon likely isn't. Perhaps why we see a different experience of hallucinations. Yeah, absolutely. I do like this idea, and I will come back to this idea a bit later. I do like this idea that we've got the Weirwood Network who are making contact with the Targaryens and seeing whether they can, first of all, um, make a green seer Targaryen, combining the dragon dreams and the green seeing. And secondly, as we will find out probably in a season or two's time, having a baby from the first men and with green seer first men and the Targaryens. So I love this idea that that's what's going on. Let's go to a question from Rasla saying, why do you think that Simon Strong does not appear to be affected by Harrenhal and its spooky goings on? It's a good question. And it's not just Simon Strong. We have to be quite clear about this. The the only person who seems to be having this, whatever it is Damon. I've got a little asterisk next to Laris. We'll come back to Laris in just one moment. So we have to ask, why is Damon having these visions? why isn't anyone else wandering around in this constant state of confusion? Well, perhaps they're just used to it. Um, but if so, you would expect Simon Strong to be like, "Oh, yeah, no, I understand. This happens to everyone when they arrive here to start with. You'll get over it. You'll be fine soon." That doesn't happen. Simon Strong seems to be seriously confused about Damon when he's like staring at this person pouring him a drink and thinking that it's his ex-wife. Simon Strong's like, what's going on here? So he doesn't seem to be affected. None of the other people seem to be affected. So the conclusion we have to reach is that this is Damon because he's sleeping in the weirwood bed and because Alys Rivers is doing something to impact him in some way. So um, Laris, which I gave the little asterisk to, I think we're supposed to get a little alarm bell in the back of our minds when Laris is there at the Green Council and Aegon's going, well, why are you not angry? They've just taken your home castle. They've just taken Harrenhal. And Laris comes out, yeah, I already taken the money out from it already. And also he says uh, words to the effect of, and it'll just send Damon mad. The longer he's there, the more he's going to be questioning his sanity. How does he know this? If Simon Strong, if all the other people there at Harrenhal, they might think it's a bit spooky, but they're not going crazy. How does Laris know that that's going to happen? Is he connected in to what's happening in some way? Does he, having grown up there, does he understand what impact this might have on new people? We don't know yet, but there is a little bell that's ringing for us there. South London wrestler saying Laris knows. Yep, and Turbo says Laris knows. I mean, my instinct is yes. Laris um, definitely knows. Noah Holland, good point. So Simon acknowledged the old gods as well as the new. Definitely, and how strong. I don't think we've ever definitively been told this, but the very, very clear implication is that House Strong are a First Men family. In having taken over a castle that has got a lot of kind of weirwood energy going on. So he's more at home there than probably most people would be. Let's go to a question from Phelan Walker saying, "Good day, Robert. As I was watching episode 4 of House of the Dragon, it struck me that the Dance of the Dragons must be painful for the dragons as well as the Targaryens. Surely most of the dragons are also related to each other in some way. So far, we haven't seen any resistance from the dragons on fighting and killing each other. Could this be an issue in the future? In other words, Dance of the Dragons from the dragon's perspective." So this does give me the chance to alert you to what I think is probably the um, biggest and most interesting update that George R. R. Martin has done, and it's not a blog for uh, certainly a year, probably several years. It came out today, and it was about dragons. And it's a long post, and it starts out uh, talking about what he uses as the starting point this last episode. But then he starts talking about the number of legs that dragons have, which is a particular hobby horse of his. And then also heraldry, which is another particular hobby horse of his. It seems, and the way he's saying it seems that he's come to terms with it, but he was a bit frustrated, it would appear, that so he thinks dragons have two legs and then wings with arms like that, rather than four legs and completely separate wings. And his argument is that nowhere in nature do you have beasts with six limbs. You have four limbs. You have the legs, and then the arms are attached to the wings. And so that's what his dragons are like. But what happened in Game of Thrones, the original show, was that they changed at some point in about season, I think it was season 5. They changed the Targaryen sigil from being a dragon with 2 legs to being a dragon with 4 legs, and George R. R. Martin didn't like that. I don't think he said much at the time, but he did not like that. And he also doesn't like, but understands the fact that House of the Dragon have kept that sigil for the sake of consistency in the TV show world. He doesn't like it. He wants it back as pardon me, as the 2 legs with 2 arms being the wings. Um, so that's how this starts, and then he sort of goes off in this sort of soft dragon lore drop is probably the way I would say it. If you're interested, if you go to my X, my Twitter, then I did tweet this out just a little bit earlier today. You can find the link off of there. But one of the things that he said was, "My dragons do not talk." He talks a little bit about Smaug the dragon, and Tolkien's dragons were intelligent. He says, "My dragons do not talk. They are relatively intelligent, but they are still beasts," he says. And he goes on to talk about the bond a bit between humans and dragons. He doesn't mention dragon relations. And I think we're supposed to. He has previously said that if you're trying to think of how intelligent a dragon is in his world, think of a very clever dog. And for anyone who's had a dog, you will know some dogs are not very clever. Some dogs, however, are very clever, and they understand so much. And that is what he's got here as a dragon. They understand so much, but also it's still a beast in his language. So, how will they be mourning other dragons because they're related to them? We don't see this at all in Fire and Blood. The only time that we see a dragon seemingly mourn another dragon is Silverwing seemingly mourning the death of Vermithor, and that seems to be because Silverwing and Vermithor, that was Alyson and Jaehaerys's dragons. Yes, they had riders later, but they formed a strong bond. And George R. R. Martin does talk in this blog post. He talks about the fact that the riders' feelings, thoughts, desires will play through into the dragon. So we would expect that. He doesn't say, and the dragons will have strong bonds with their parent dragons or anything like that. So as much as it kind of makes sense, it, the because of the dragon bonding thing, the pain that they feel is more to do with the connection that they had with their rider and what connection their rider had with other people. Commander Ray, Fabian Frankel does an amazing job as Kristen Cole. His acting is phenomenal, so much so that people actually translate their hate for the character to him, unfortunately. He definitely makes Cole more interesting to me. I wanted to get your take on which characters you found you enjoy better than the book versions, and which one's a perfect one for one with the book character. Well, I think I will probably start by saying that there's no character that's a perfect one for one from the book, and that's okay. The book itself is, and I've not actually gone and looked exactly how long we've got, how many words, how many pages we've got, but this is like a 700-page book, of which a part of it, only a portion, is talking about the Dance of the Dragons. Maybe a couple of 100 pages, something along those lines. So what we're doing in comparison to Game of Thrones, where we had a massive book which got turned into one season of a TV show, season 1, we've got a fraction of one book, which is being turned into probably 4 seasons. So for any given character, there's a very good chance they've only, in terms of the actual dialogue, they've probably only got 2 or 3 lines at most, and a bit of a description. So almost every character has been expanded for the TV show. So I don't think there are many that we can honestly say are one for one. Now, we're then left with, when you add to the character, are you taking this in a new and interesting direction? So there are some that they have seemingly kept to the spirit of the character. They've given them more, like Corlys Velaryon, I think, is probably the best example of this, is that they haven't tried to take that character in a completely different direction. The character is largely as we know them from the book. It's just that Corlys has got more lines, and Corlys has got slightly more layers. We see more about his relationship with Rhaenys, things like that. But broadly speaking, he's the same. In terms of characters where things have shifted a lot, Helena, I love what they've done with Helena. Helena was quite a background character in the book, to be honest. And here, giving her the dragon dreams and giving her a character and personality over and above that, I think has worked really well. Viserys, clearly in season 1, I thought that, and George R. R. Martin said this, he said this about both of those characters, actually, Helena and Viserys. Both of them he thought were better than the characters that he'd drawn. I love what they've done. We've been talking about this today. I love what they've done with Aegon. To have people feel sympathetic towards Aegon II is an astonishing feat, particularly given the fact that at the beginning of this season, there was still no sympathy for him. Viewers did not feel any sympathy for him whatsoever. By the end of season 4, I've heard so many people say, yeah, I don't think he's a good person, but I do feel sorry for him. And I think that shows good writing. The other person I would add that I've appreciated what they've done is Messalina, who again is quite a background character, quite a mysterious character, but quite a background character in the book. Here they've given her a lot more volition. They've given her some things that she wants to achieve, some things that she doesn't like, some things she does like. And I think that has created a much better character and somebody who can, at some point, be a proper foil for Larys Strong. Scarlet Widow saying, totally, I agree that Aegon is a dynamic character this season. April May saying, go back and rewatch when Daemon sees the strong sigil. Look at that sigil closer on the flags. Oh, I'm intrigued by that. What happens on the flags? Maybe someone will drop it in there into the chat. Andrew Kay saying the Aegon portrayal has been really well done, highlighting him being impulsive, ill-prepared, thrust into power, and even a personal tragedy. Paul Al-Gaib saying, hello, Robert. After hearing you talk about the beginning of World War I during the last stream, I am now intrigued to hear you talk more on real history. Well, thank you for the compliment. Maybe in another life I would have had a history channel. Concerning the last episode, Rhaenyra spoke to Jace about Aegon's prophecy. However, she didn't get to the point of it, in that she did not mention the threat from the north at any point. Do you think that was a choice by the writers to not tell the viewer again, or did Rhaenyra simply pass over this crucial detail? Well, I think the implication is she did give the whole prophecy and everything to Jace, but they didn't want to show it to us. I'm a bit disappointed by that because I wanted to know whether he made the connection between what she says and his conversation with Cregan 3 episodes earlier. So, I was a bit a bit disappointed about that, but I think the implication is that he now knows all of it. And then Paul's also saying, while I really enjoyed episode 4, I think it could have done a few things better. Rhaenys seemed like such a rational yet caring person that it didn't make sense to me that she would face Vhagar despite having achieved a victory already by taking out Sunfire. Also, Vhagar's battlefield teleportation skills are once again astonishing. The book version seems more plausible. So I really liked, still 9 out of 10, you said, for the episode. I really liked the changes they made here. It worked for me because it didn't make sense why they would completely abandon King's Landing, take the army out, and both dragons. That didn't make any particular sense to me. So for this to be Vhagar going out sneakily and then Sunfire heading out because Aegon was impetuous, yeah, I kind of get that. As for Rhaenys going back, I think this is a bit of where the characterization in the book has unfortunately led to some actions in the book that they had to mirror in the TV show, but that didn't quite match the character. What I mean by that is that I did a video on Rhaenys a couple of days ago. Rhaenys in the book is a lot more warlike. They've presented her on the TV show, and I understand why. And I think Eve Best did fantastically, and I think this is a really good character shift. But on the TV show, Rhaenys is there kind of like as this calming influence. It's not my place to start this war. Telling Rhaenyra, yeah, you really need to have a think. How can we stop this? Going and talking to her husband and saying, "Oh, all of these men, they're just trying to go to war. Rhaenyra is the only one who can possibly prevent this." She's quite pacifistic on the TV show. In the book, when you get to the Black Council, she's the first person to say, "We are at war." She's the first person to say, we should just attack King's Landing. We've got enough dragons. Let's go and do it. She puts herself forward for what happens in Rook's Rest, seemingly because she's just frustrated by the lack of battle. And when you get to that moment in Rook's Rest where she realizes that she's outnumbered, we're told she let out a glad cry and then went into battle, turned her dragon round, went into battle. That's not what happened on the TV show. There was no glad cry. In the book, she wants this battle. She's happy to. She's spent her entire life passed over for the throne. Her children passed over for the throne. All of this is just because of the inherent problems within the system, and Aegon is the problem, the exemplification of the problem. So she goes and takes down Aegon. Vhagar takes her out, but she takes down Aegon, and that is a deliberate thing on her part. As I said, I really enjoyed the changes that they made. I thought they worked really well. But I think that her turning around and going back into the battle after she's dealt with Sunfire is an attempt to marry the book characterization with the changes they made to the TV show. And a couple of people saying I'm confused why they didn't send more. Steffi L saying I'm confused why they didn't send more than one dragon when Rook's Rest was clearly a trap. Yeah, I think they should have sent more than one dragon. That's just my general take. This is another one of those moments where I suspect this is because of a slight shift between what happened in the book and what happened on the show. They aged up Rhaena's well, they aged up Rhaena and Rhaena's dragon. They've aged up Jace a little bit as well. And so in the book, you look at it and go, well, actually, Jace is too young, and Rhaena is too young, and Rhaenyra has not really been with it. So Rhaenys is the only person. Daemon's gone off to Harrenhal. Rhaenys is the only person. That's the clear implication in the book. On the TV show, because they've aged some people up and because they've made Rhaenyra, and again, I get this change, I understand why, but they've made her a lot more rational and calm, and that that makes it more obvious that they've got 4 dragons there. They could send in 2. That's fine. That's not a problem. They can do that. And it looked a bit weird, I think, on the TV show when they only sent in 1. So they kind of tried to get around that by showing that Rhaenyra, first of all, says to Jace, "Yeah, you're a bit too young and inexperienced," and then she basically says, added to which, "You're the heir, and the heir is really important because of this prophecy." It's it's just one of those things which is just a slight um, disconnect between the book and the show. Abadi Dibadoo saying, "I don't like that old huge Vagar as a stealth killer." Yeah, they've also seemingly made Vagar larger. So again, things that don't quite work on the TV show, it's often because they've shifted it through a few things for understandable reasons from the book. Let's go to Catherine Furseth saying, "Hi, Robert. Hi there. House of the Dragon has given us new and expanded insights into dragon dreams and Targaryens. More of them are experiencing them than previously thought. With this new knowledge, what new insights has it given you regarding the characters in the main story? For example, would it be fair now to describe Jon Snow's dreams as dragon dreams? They seem to fit the description. And what about Rhaegar? Did he have them? What do you think?" So, uh, yes, so we've got 3 extra characters as revealed by this show who had dragon dreams: Helena, Viserys, and Aegon the Conqueror. Which turns this from being dragon dreams are a thing which occasional Targaryens get to being something where you go, this is something a lot of Targaryens get. Maybe they get it, maybe they don't, but a lot do. So, does that change anything in the main story? Well, I think it changes things in Fire and Blood. A lot of characters who we've been told are simple, or bookish, even perhaps. Maybe they are getting dragon dreams and we just didn't know it before, but the Maesters don't really know how to handle that. As for Jon, um, I think he has in the book, he has a lot of dreams. It has to be said, he does have a lot of dreams. It didn't come across on the TV show, but most of them are this recurring dream that he has about going into the crypts of Winterfell. And the main thing we learn there is that he does not belong. That's not his place. Now, then he also has a second kind of dream, which is more of a kind of a walking dream. He sees through ghost to other uh, um, so just siblings basically. So he sees Shaggy Dog, he sees Rickon. Then we get the third type of dream, where in his penultimate chapter we get this dream which just seems so on the nose of Jon, you're Azor Ahai reborn. He's standing there in interesting connection back here to Aegon II in what appears to be Valyrian steel armor, with a flaming sword at the top of the wall as dead people come towards him and he's chopping them down. He is basically being Azor Ahai reborn in that. What is interesting, and I'm sure this was intentional by the showrunner, by the writers, he gets woken from that dream by a raven. And here, with Daemon on the TV show, he gets woken with a raven has come. And I think that echo is deliberate. And I think that is trying to tell us that that actually was not a dragon dream per se. He's never dreamt of dragons. It's not a dragon dream per se. This, it wasn't a vision of the future, of exactly what's going to be happening. It was something which was put in there, I think, by Bloodraven. And I think that is a hint that some of what Jon Snow is, not Jon Snow, some of what Daemon is seeing is put in there by Alys Rivers, perhaps. Um, April May saying Rhaenys did not go back for Aegon. She was going back for Aemond. Look at her path. She flew and what she was really doing. Yeah, no, I agree. If I said Aemond, if I said Aegon when I meant Aemond, that's definitely what I think she was doing. She was going back there for him. Renabe Mitra saying, Aziz from History of Westeros confirmed my theory from an earlier stream where that skull and dragonstone is Meraxes, because the eye socket does have an elongation that resembles a crossbow bolt. I mean, a good spot from Aziz there. A son of ice and fire saying, Hello, Robert. While I am fully aware that Aegon II has done such terrible things in his life, I cannot stop myself for having some sympathy for him. He has basically spent his entire life not feeling any genuine love or affection from anyone. His father Viserys didn't care for him. He suffered from abuse and neglect from his mother and grandfather. His wants and needs are constantly ignored, forced to become king despite not wanting to. I'm in no way saying this is an excuse for the bad things he's done, but I cannot help but feel that if he had been treated with more care and respect, he might have turned out to be a better person. Do you believe that one of George R. R. Martin's themes of the story might be that people who turn out to be horrible monsters are not born that way, but shaped to become monsters due to circumstances outside of their control? Yeah, so in terms of sort of his intentions of the story, he tends to stick to the standard Tolkien line that he doesn't like allegory. And I tend to agree with that. That doesn't mean that he doesn't have themes to his story. Even Tolkien obviously had themes to his story. You can't get away from the fact he liked nature. Nature good, industrialization bad. You can't get away there. Friendship and love good, control, killing people bad. That kind of thing. High level was definitely a theme of Lord of the Rings, and so there are some things with George R. R. Martin that we have to say, yep, they are a theme. It's one of those themes, the fact that monsters are created, they're not born. I think I wouldn't quite put it in quite that stark a term. I would say that he definitely plays with the idea that monsters are born. And the Targaryens, this line about flipping a coin, whether somebody's going to be great or terrible, um, he plays with this idea. I don't think he comes down on a very firm line on it, one way or another. We do, however, get a few interesting examples, insights. Jon is not Ned Stark's son, but Ned Stark is Jon's father. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Is that the way that Jon is, the way that Jon acts, is a reflection of his upbringing by Ned, and all of those three central characters of Jon and Daenerys and Tyrion, they grew up without their natural, without their mother who died in childbirth, and they grew up potentially, at least in Tyrion's place, without their actual father. And each of those characters have therefore had to choose who their shaping figures are, and that has created each of them as characters. And I think that is the kind of playing with this idea that George R. Martin wishes to do, rather than a strong and clear theme going through it. Let's have a look in the chat. Martin said, "Good evening, Robert. Good evening to you too, Martin. Great to see you." And then GG81 saying, "Good evening, Robert. Thank you for the content. Look forward as always." So member for 3 months. If you're a channel member, the best way to support this channel is always via Patreon. But if you don't want to do that for whatever reason, you can become a channel member. If you're a channel member for a while, every now and then they give you effectively free super chats. Your comment gets highlighted in the chat, so it makes it easier for me to spot it. So thank you very much there, GG81. And question from Martin S. Did the Targaryen dynasty on Westeros have some magical means of fast, long-distance travel akin to Palantiri, or was Messenger on Dragon the fastest? So there are glass candles around in the universe. Now, glass candles we've not really seen in action, sort of in passing, with Marwyn the Mage. But apparently they allow you to see across long distances and communicate across long distances. They are cousins to Palantiri, it would appear. You might think that the Targaryens would therefore have one or more, but we never hear of them having them. One thing which I think I really like about House of the Dragon in terms of lore is that they've given the Targaryens more stuff from Valyria. Because this was always an issue. This was always something that it didn't quite feel right. Is that the story was that Daenys the Dreamer had this dream, Valyria is going to blow up, it's going to be terrible, let's go. So they got their stuff and they headed off. And that's great, but what do they have from Valyria, this great ancient civilization? Well, they have dragons, and they have 2 Valyrian steel swords. The end. And that always felt a little bit weird. Did they not have this mysterious dragon horns that could help them control dragons? They just had 2 swords. Is that all they had? Do they not have any kind of books or knowledge? They seem to have forgotten how to do huge amounts of things to do with dragons. Did they not have any of the books or knowledge that they got from old Valyria? What House of the Dragon has done is say, yeah, they've actually got a lot of this stuff now. You will see again and again, particularly in season 2 of House of the Dragon, where people like Rhaenyra are going through the library, reading the old texts. They have got old knowledge from Valyria. We've got that Valyrian steel dagger was theirs, and that is another thing that another bit of inheritance. They've got a Valyrian steel necklace that Daemon gives to Rhaenyra back in, I think, even episode 1. They've got Aegon the Conqueror's Valyrian steel suit of armor that Aegon wears. So they've got all these things here. The question now is, what happens to them? When does all that disappear? My guess is probably a lot of it will disappear during the Dance of the Dragons. Jenny of Oldstones, isn't the idea that the book was supposed to be from the Maester's point of view, hence Rhaenyra being a better person? Yes. So the Fire and Blood is an in-world history written by the Maesters, and that means that we get their different sources, things that they've, this person wrote the book or that book over there, and this person's got this witness statement over here. And let's try and add these together and figure out what's going on. So that's the idea. But yes, this is very much from the Maester's perspective. And so we would expect, given what we see through this, in world, the Maesters like the status quo. They don't like magic. And it's fair to say that their attitude towards women is often quite misogynistic. So, yes, we would expect to see Rhaenyra not given a good write up, and she isn't given a good write up. So, what we see here in House of the Dragon does kind of make sense. It does kind of work that this isn't seen through Mace's eyes. This is actually what was going on. Julian saying, why do so many think that Alicent and Otto failed to prep Aegon for the throne when it was established so many times in season one that Aegon never cared? Why blame them when that's clearly just his nature? So, um, I think this is both sides, to be honest. That yes, it's established that he didn't care. He didn't really want it. He didn't want to learn. But at the same time, he clearly wasn't mentored in a way that Rhaenyra was. Rhaenyra, we see, she was made a cupbearer of the king, which meant, I mean, it's not a place on the small council, but it meant that she got to listen to all of the small council discussions, so she could start to learn things there. And was Aegon ever brought into that position? No. Um, the extra layer of subtlety that they're obviously trying to say is that Viserys was king, and he always wanted Rhaenyra to succeed him. So he gave Rhaenyra the opportunities, and he didn't give Aegon the opportunities because he didn't think Aegon was going to be inheriting. That wasn't what his plan was. And if you get Alicent and Otto, I mean, with the best will in the world, they can hire some really good tutors. And if Aegon didn't want to learn stuff, then Aegon wasn't going to learn stuff. But they could not insist that Aegon gets added to the small council, gets made cupbearer to the king or whatever. Um, Let's go to a question from, I'm sure I had another question in here somewhere. Yes, Martin S. I meant fast long distance communication, not fast long distance travel. Typo on my part, but you and folks in chat understood me correctly anyway. Yes, so long distance communication. So that's what the glass candles theoretically can provide. They seem to be able to provide that now in A Song of Ice and Fire. The kind of the backstory on the glass candles is, and they're made from dragon glass, which we know is very closely associated with. This is frozen fire. This is obsidian. This is closely associated with dragonstone. Um, they do not work when the dragons aren't around. So the implication is that presumably they must have worked while we're at the height of the Dance of the Dragons. There are so many dragons there that probably they worked, but we do not see the Targaryens ever using them. It seems to have been other people who had them. Reflective rambling, picking up a question for Scott of Greywater Watch. Thank you. I love it when people do this. It's very kind of you. The dagger was in Vagar's blast when Aemon picked it up, glowing. Was he reading something revealed by Dragonfire on it? Yeah, interesting question. So, Aemon picked up the dagger and clearly was interested in it. The dagger has the prophecy on it. It will have got hot it may well have revealed the prophecy. Did he see it and understand something? Maybe. Ryan Condal has kind of teased that someone has noticed Helena's prophecies. Who? The best guess here is Aemond. So there are hints. We've not seen anything concrete yet, but there are hints that maybe Aemond is more aware of all of this prophecy stuff than we might otherwise think. And we do know that he will go to Harrenhal at some point. And once he's at Harrenhal, then probably very similar things are going to happen to him as happened to Damon. So, did he read something on it? Probably. We just can't be sure. Marvin Martin, Green Banners in episode 8 and Otto told Rhaenyra about bribing the lords, yet the blacks never prepared and relied on oaths only like Ned Stark. So Rhaenyra's dealing or trying to get people on side does seem to be a lot more limited than Otto's efforts. A lot more personal, but a lot more limited. So she sends out Jace up to say, up to the Vale, up to, we didn't see it on the show, it has to be said, but up to House Manderley at White Harbour, and then up to the Starks, basically to say, do you remember your vow? And the people who remembered were on side, and the people who didn't were not. Otto was there. He seems constantly trying to figure out, how do we get people on our side? How do we persuade them? On the TV show, that procession, that was all Otto's idea in order to get people on his side by making Rhaenyra look horrible. So they seem to have different approaches, and Rhaenyra, her motivation isn't so much honor and love of family as a desire not to go into all-out dragon war, and a desire to make sure that she keeps the prophecy going. Although I have to say, I mean, she didn't tell Jace before she went to King's Landing. Surely she should have said before then, because if she'd been captured or killed, then, as far as she was aware, Aegon's prophecy was gone. Stephanie Frederick saying, thanks to Martin S on my behalf. Well, massive thanks to Martin S, always. Incredible supporter. I hugely appreciate it. Weirwood Net saying, sending some of that mod love. Oh, yeah, let's do mod love right now. So if you are here in the chat, if you are enjoying what's going on in the chat, a chance just to share your thoughts in a supportive environment with people who care about the stuff you care about, knowing that protected from bots and trolls or whoever. That's all down to the moderators. The moderators do amazing work. So if you are in the chat, please just give them a little bit of love. Let them know that you appreciate them. Thank you very much. I appreciate the moderators. I also appreciate my patrons. Thank you. I can't do this without your support. So thank you very much, moderators. Let's go into the chat. Reflective Rambling saying, everyone in the chat now, happy belated birthday IDG. Let's move on from that one. And Ranabir Mitra, question from there. Do you believe Willem Blackwood is set up to replace Kermit Tully in the lads? Quite possibly. So this is an understandable and yet also slightly disappointing subtle shift. When George R. R. Martin was writing The World of Ice and Fire a long time ago, before he realized that Game of Thrones would get massive, he did what he's done across his entire creation, is that he just drops a few silly Easter eggs in there every now and then. And during the Dance of the Dragons, House Tully weren't really involved, but he decided that he would name a few of them after a few of his favourite characters from Sesame Street. So, and the Muppets. So we have the Tullys, we have Grover, Oscar, and Kermit. Now, that was absolutely fine when they were just minor characters in an obscure corner of a history book of this world that he created. But now suddenly there's a huge TV show where these characters they will get expanded, their roles will be expanded because the fact that we have to expand everyone's role because it's a TV show. And um, I think now HBO showrunners just aware we don't really want this George R. R. Martin Easter egg about Kermit and Oscar and Grover in there. So what they've done is they seem to have taken Kermit out as the most obvious and egregious example of George R. R. Martin's sense of humor. So we have Grover Tully is still there. Oscar Tully is there. Kermit Tully appears to have been removed. Now, will Willem Blackwood, who is here, will he replace Kermit Tully and the lads? The lads were basically in the latter part of the war. This was the Riverlands army belatedly, the Tullys, Blackwoods belatedly coming down and joining the war because Grover Tully's finally dead. Will they make Willem Blackwood, who's now appeared a couple of times, replace Kermit? Entirely possibly, yes. And G81, very generous. Thank you, sir, with a bit of mod love there. Maura Lee, thank you, Maura. Hugely appreciate it with a show of love, support, and blessings. Thank you. And I think, one more question in the chat. Martin S. Saying, in Tolkien's Legendarium, was it possible to imbue necklaces, bracelets, and jewelry in general with the same magic as was done to rings? Yes, theoretically, absolutely. Rings seem to work best, but if you go back in Lord of the Rings lore, in Tolkien lore, we have Sauron, but the bigger baddie is Morgoth Melkor. He did a similar thing, not in terms of sort of pouring his power into something, but instead of just being a ring of power, he did it into all of creation. And that was called Morgoth's Ring. You'll find actually there's a fascinating book in the history of Middle Earth, edited by Christopher Tolkien, called Morgoth's Ring, if you want to dig into that even more. But that's basically why is all of creation in kind of Tolkien's conceptualization fallen, because Morgoth pushed so much of himself out into it, which kind of implies that it's not just a ring, you can do it with other things. So yes, quite possibly, but it's not a good route to pursue. Andrew K saying, I'm not a Muppet expert. I mean, maybe there are some Muppet experts in the chat, who knows? But Grover, Kermit, Oscar, and Elmo, some subtle trident symbolism based on colours of the Muppet characters. Wow, I mean, you say you're not a Muppet expert. That sounds pretty expert to me. Is that true? Are those the colours of the trident? Sam saying, long-time listener, first-time caller. Well, welcome. Great to see you. What do you think about Damon surviving the dance and perhaps becoming the three-eyed raven type figure? So in the book, they never recover his body. He dies. There's this battle above the God's Eye. Book spoilers. Battle above the God's Eye. Him against Aemond, the dragon battle, and basically Damon jumps out of his saddle, jumps onto Aemond with his sword, just thrusts it into his eye, killing Aemond. They never find Damon's body. It might have escaped to become a kind of a three-eyed raven type figure. Maybe. I don't actually want that. Um, I like the thinking, the idea that we have. He feels more blood raveny than most other Targaryens. It has to be said. And here he is connected in with the Weirwood network, so I get it. But I personally like the idea that he said he'd lived too long. That was what he said. Yeah, I've lived too long, and he jumped out of his saddle so high in the air and fell into the earth, fell to the lake. He should be dead. There's nothing there that says that he could have survived. Um, First ballerina saying, with Damon seeing bats, a black goat, and a trio of dogs, it almost feels like the people who suffer from holding Harrenhal are fated to do so. So I think I had a question I was going to come to on this one, but this is, if you missed this, this is, I think it's an Easter egg. For us, for the nerds, they've not really drawn attention to it. It's just like, oh, you noticed this, but you probably didn't think about it. Now, when Damon first arrives and at Harrenhal, and he's sort of like that, he's going around the corridors. Um, he goes down one of them, and suddenly this whole load of bats just like go off. Then you see him going down the corridor, and he looks and he turns and he sees a black goat. Then we get three dogs lying down there in front of the fire. Why is this important? Because these are the sigils of three houses that have held Harrenhal. The Bats is both House Lothston and House Went. Both of them have bat sigils. Three dogs, that's House Clegane, and the mountain held the the castle for a while. The Black Goat, who is the Black Goat, that's Vargo Hoat, he also held it for a while. So, could this be um, in world sort of an indication that this curse is going to affect all of these people, or is it just an Easter egg for us? I think this is just an Easter egg for us. So, what does that mean? Are we going to see any more of these things? If this is just an Easter egg for us, then we should probably be looking out for other sigils that are there now. Off the top of I should have gone through and had double checked all of the different sigils for house towers and things like this. But maybe we should look out for. I forgot what I was going to say now. Someone in the chat will remember a sigil that we've missed that is very obvious. But the this is, I think, it's an Easter egg. It's not the curse. Um, confirmation that Andrew Kay is indeed right about the Muppet colours being the colours of the three rivers, the three different forks, the red, the blue, and the green. So yeah, that's nice. I like that. Another little Easter egg. Kermit is green, Elmo is red, and Grover is blue. Says Carl Snark. Damn you, George R. R. Martin. Yeah. Okay, I like that. I hadn't. I knew they were silly things, but I hadn't quite picked up on that one before. Randa Mitra saying, have to credit this grey area for the theory regarding Damon and the previous three-eyed raven. Yeah, I've not seen that video, but I'm sure it's well thought out. Nick One Thornton saying, why doesn't Damon just use a TARDIS? Yep, absolutely. He was a good doctor, it has to be said. Clint Marlin, Robert, have you read any Michael Crichton books? Yes, I have, but not for a very long time. I'm trying to remember what Michael Crichton books I read. Um, Yeah, I might. I think he was like he was Jurassic Park and a few others. Um, I have read a couple of Michael Crichton books, but yes, that was a long time ago. Constantine Thranos saying, can we assume that Aegon's injuries will be less severe compared to his book counterparts due to the Valyrian steel armor? I think this is a really interesting point. I've got a couple of questions coming up about the future for Aegon, but I will pick this bit up now because I think this is important. They highlighted the fact that he was wearing Valyrian steel armor, and I think that is important. Valyrian steel swords. We've seen how next level they are, and Valyrian steel armor. We've seen we have to assume that's also next level. And when we see, we don't get a good long look, but we see a little bit of Aegon lying there on the floor. And the armor doesn't look too bad, it has to be said, given the fact that he has fallen from such a huge height. If he's not dead, that's astonishing. And if the armor isn't all battered up and falling to pieces, that is also astonishing. So, yes, I think is the short answer here. We can probably credit him being alive because of that, and it's something I'd not really even thought about before. He he fell from the sky on his dragon. How on earth did he survive? And other times we hear that people survive because the dragon was only a few feet from the ground when they fell off, that kind of thing. Every other time they die. This gives a good explanation for how he managed to survive. I think that's it for the chat. So let's go to Andrew Geets saying, hi, Robert. I think it would be interesting if Hugh Hammer was sent to Dragonstone by Aemond to infiltrate the Blacks as a dragon seed. I realise that he didn't change sides immediately, but I think it would add more intrigue to the story. So I like the idea. But I think we've had set up already, and we don't know the exact details of how this is going to happen, but we've had set up already the two facts that we need to know about Hugh Hammer, which will lead to him abandoning King's Landing and presumably going to Dragonstone. Fact number one is he's got a sick daughter, and he's got a sick daughter who needs various, at the very least, food, sustenance. And with the blockade, that's not happening in King's Landing. And secondly, he has been promised by Aegon that he's going to get preferential payment terms, basically, because of the blockade. And he's not. Partly, I suspect now, because Aegon is out of action for a while, but also Team Green generally, they're not. I mean, Otto's been fired. He was the other person who was there. They've got their mind on other things. So this is not going to happen. He's going to hold on, trying to find, I should be getting this extra money from the crown. Where is it? I'm not getting it. My daughter's getting worse and worse. He has to leave. And I think that having set up those things, having not set up anything to do with Aemond even knowing that he exists, I think we've got the basis of how he quits King's Landing and goes to Dragonstone. We just don't know the details yet. A question from Martin S. Lord of the Rings question. When the One Ring was destroyed, the remaining rings of power lost their magic. Could someone like maybe Aula have severed the connection so that the One Ring could be destroyed without taking down the Elven rings? Yes, so Aula he's one of the Valar. He's basically a god pantheon figure and a smith, Aula the smith. Could he have done, and what you suggest here is sever a connection between the ring and the other rings, or destroy the ring. Yeah, I suspect he could have done many things here. But the Valar, at this stage, they have taken themselves off of the mortal plane. They do not want anything to do with this. And they have basically said, okay, mortals, elves who are staying there, this is now for you. You have to deal with it. And the kind of the feel I suspect that Tolkien wants, he doesn't say it quite like this, but it's like you're allowing your teenage children to take responsibility for their own lives and actions. That's the kind of feel that we've got going on here. Yeah, the Valar could come in and they could sort it all out. They could push Sauron aside. They could pick up the ring and squash it. They could do all of those kind of things. But they want the children of Iluvatar to have their own volition and to manage their own affairs. Corvus Art saying, didn't Nettles feed her dragon a black goat? I would have to have a look to see what we're told here. Hang on, let me just I'll do some live research for you. Now, what did we? We're told that she delivered a freshly slaughtered sheep every morning. That's what we're told. So no, not a black goat specifically. So yeah, it's a nice idea, but I don't think that's right. And I think that's me caught up. Yeah, that's me caught up. Although Ranabir Mitra is saying, yes, a black ram before leaving Damon for good and escaping to the Vale. Oh, right. So this is not when she's doing that initially. This is much later. Okay, interesting. So let's have a quick flick through. Let's just see whether I can. Okay, so here we go. So when they're last together, Damon and Nettles. Thank you for this. I love it when we can get a little bit more information here. Damon helped. This is what we read. Damon helped Nettles saddle Sheep Stealer one last time. It was her custom to feed him each day before she flew. Dragons bend easier to their rider's will when full. Good bit of dragon lore. That morning, she fed him a black ram, the largest in all of Maidenpool, slitting the ram's throat herself. So, yes, I think that's the answer to the question. Is yes. On that last time, it was a black ram that she fed to Sheep Stealer. I don't think that. There's a particular link across to what we saw the black goat in Harrenhal. Maybe there is. But yeah, as people are pointing out, a ram is a sheep, not a goat. But yeah, my instinct is that there's not a link here. The black goat over in Harrenhal is part of an Easter egg for us. Is basically where we're at. Callie Summers, Sigils of Harrenhal. Thank you. I was hoping somebody would do this for me. I love it when people do this. So we should probably keep an eye out for Sigils of Harrenhal. House Hawes. They quartered ship, pine, grapes, and raven. I mean, I think we can probably see a raven. We may have seen grapes already, who knows? Coheris, Flames and Skulls. I think there's a good chance we'll see that. Haraway and Towers are Towers. We've definitely seen Towers. Strong, we've seen their sigil already. Lothston went as Bats. Slint is a spear, and Baelish is the Titan of Bravos. Or a Mockingbird, of course, for Peter Baelish. So maybe we keep an eye out for a spear coming up soon. The others, I think we can just sort of say we've seen some towers and things already. Interesting. Thank you very much for that. Right, let's go to George R. Tolkien. Salutations of Robert, and to you too, sir. The Red Dragon and the Gold. Wow, what an episode. I was wondering what will happen to Aegon's beautiful armor. Do you think it was completely destroyed beyond repair? We were sort of talking about this a moment, so we'll just carry on with this one. Was it just the helmet that melted? Also, the blood that was spilling from Sunfire was burning soldiers and steaming when he was cut open. Do you think it was the fire that burned Aegon, or was it the flames from Vhagar that did it? Um, uh, and you also asked about the Black Goat. I think we've covered the Black Goat for the time being. And let's have a look at this first bit. What will happen to the armor? Well, they will have to get the armor off of him, I think, is the first thing. If he was burned, I'm having images of uh, what we may see in A Night of the Seven Kingdoms when we get the end of the story, which is quite gruesome, where we get Balon Breakspear, who has his helmet taken off and it's kind of stuck to him. And I'm not going to go all the way down describing exactly what happened, but that's the kind of feel I get. Valyrian steel is too precious to just throw away. I don't know the extent to which they will say, oh, this is stuck to him, we can't get rid of it, or whether they kind of peel it off or something. But yeah, that will happen. I think this partly explains perhaps why the Valyrian steel armor is not in use in A Song of Ice and Fire, because if it was on him and it's now it's kind of had to be kind of broken off in bits and peeled off, it's probably not the kind of thing anyone wants to wear again, even if it's kept in one piece. Kirsty Angel, with a little bit extra background, the Alys Rivers actress said in an interview she's 400 years old, then in the show that she's a barn owl. Barn owls have heart-shaped faces and red eyes, which is obviously very connected in with the Weirwood Network. Curse Ballerina, Honest Hammer Honest Hammer saying, "Hi Robert, are there any examples of characters simply pretending to be prophetic in A Song of Ice and Fire, in A Song of Ice and Fire, Fire and Blood, or Dunk and Egg? Pretending to be prophetic? I can't think of any off the top of my head that are obviously just making it up. Yeah, I'll throw this one to the chat. Let me know if the so I just spotted Carl Carsnark saying, "I'm a barn owl" is my new pickup line. Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. If there's anyone in the world of Ice and Fire who is obviously just blagging it, just making it up as they go along. Zachary Chronix saying Melisandre seems to be making it up sometimes. Yes, she definitely does. A couple of people pointing out that Melisandre has a heart-shaped face as well. Yeah, I mean, the links across from fire magic into the weirwood magic are stronger than we sometimes think. Alhad, greetings, Robert. During her conversation with Daemon, Alys Rivers puts her arm on her stomach. Considering her story in the books, do you think she is really interested in having a Targaryen child? If yes, any guesses as to why? So I didn't spot that. I don't know if anyone else did. Her sort of, I assume you mean sort of like in a way a pregnant mother might put her hand over her stomach. I didn't spot that, but yeah, in the book, what happens is that Daemon is immune to her charms, but Aemon falls straight away. He kills the whole household except her. and then immediately takes her as a bedmate, we're told. And then after the end of the war, she seems to be in control of Harrenhal, and she says, I've got a child from Aemond, and he is now the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. And that's one of the loose threads that's left when Fire and Blood Part 1 ends. And incidentally, complete digression, the latest blog post from George R. Martin, there's a lot in there, and you can read too much. I always try to stop myself reading too much, but it was noticeable when he was talking about dragon lore. He said, and yes, we're going to be getting more in The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, and a bit more in Blood and Fire, which is part 2 of Fire and Blood. And my mind immediately went to, oh, so you're thinking about Fire and Blood Part 2 already, to the extent that you are confident how much dragon lore is going to be dropped in there. It would not surprise me. Whenever we get The Winds of Winter, I think we'll get Duncan Egg's stories quickly, but I think we will also get Fire and Blood Part 2, which he said is probably going to be called Blood and Fire. Quite quickly. I think that's already going on in his mind. It wouldn't surprise me if he's already started doing a little bit of Fire and Blood wasn't part of the plan, and he just produced that nice and quickly. That's a digression. Alys Rivers, is she wanting a Targaryen child? Possibly. Somebody said that Grey Area had done a video on this, which I've not seen, so I've no idea whether what I'm about to say corresponds to that. Maybe somebody who has seen it can tell me. But I have in my mind now, based purely on what I've seen on the TV show, this kind of fan fiction, tinfoil, based on nothing. This isn't me doing great analysis and coming up with something. It's just what I think sounds cool. Is if she has this child, and this child is a child of the Targaryens and the First Men, very weirwood magic. Why, first of all? Well, the weirwood network, as we will see with Bloodravens, seem to be very focused in on this idea of we need a prince that was promised that is half Targaryen, half Greenseer, and which is where we get to half Targaryen, half First Men, which is where we get the Rhaegar and Lyanna thing coming from. But also, we get Bloodraven. With me, everything comes back to Bloodraven, obviously. Bloodraven is half Targaryen, half Blackwood, First Men, ethnicity. I do just wonder, what if that child survives? We don't know what happens to that child. What if that child survives and gets brought into House Blackwood in some way, adopted into House Blackwood, and from that line comes Bloodraven? I have no idea whether the timelines would work for that. I have no idea about, or in fact, it's not that I have no idea. I've not even thought. This is just pure fan fiction on my side. It would be great, really cool, and I'd love it. April May saying she's not a woman, she's a barn owl cursed to live inside a human body. That was so awesome to hear. Yeah, that is basically basically a big hint, I think, that she's a skin changer. I think we will find a barn owl somewhere along the line, and I think that we'll find that she's a skin changer who walks into the barn owl on a regular basis. And interesting, April May saying some of the dragons are cursed this way too. Aryan Brightflame was a dragon in a human form and it drove him mad. Yeah, interesting take. let's go. Everyone's saying, when in doubt, blame Bloodraven. Yeah, absolutely. Always go to Bloodraven. As I say, if you're after incisive analysis, that wasn't incisive analysis. That was just me doing a little bit of fan fiction for myself. Martin S. I think Tolkien did a good and much needed job of keeping the Valar out of an active role in later ages. I just wondered if any means short of Eru could have severed the connection between the rings. Yes, I think the Valar could have done. I think they definitely had the power. Snowgull saying, "Hi, Robert. It's been a while since I had a question for you. I still love your content. Well, thank you. I hugely appreciate it. Why does Aegon's dream need to be such a closely guarded secret? What is the harm in more people knowing? Indeed, wouldn't it be better for more people to know so you don't need to fear the knowledge being lost? It would also potentially prevent misunderstandings like Alicent's. Why not treat it like the saying, there must always be a Stark in Winterfell? Have it be something like, there must always be a dragon riding Targaryen ruling Westeros. I just don't understand why it needs to be such a secret." Um, okay, so I think I'm going to do a video on this because this is a question I've thought about a lot. The the thing is that if you try and look through how this got to Rhaenyra, we get Viserys passing it on to her, king to heir. He presumably received it from Jaehaerys, king to heir. But where did Jaehaerys get it from? And we've tried to work our way through this, and there's lots of different possible ways through. But Maegor didn't view Maegor, who preceded Jaehaerys, didn't view Jaehaerys as being his heir, and neither did um, uh, Aegon, as far as we're aware, the Aegon the Uncrowned, who was the rival. So where did Jaehaerys get it from? The only implication is that at some point early on, this wasn't just king to heir. We've kind of internalized, I think, this idea that Visenya probably knew. That's Visenya, the sister wife of Aegon. She passed it down probably to Maegor. But does this mean that to start with, it wasn't just there? Does this mean that this is actually Viserys misinterpreting the fact that it should be spread slightly more broadly, and misinterpreting the fact that the old and by that point probably slightly cognitively challenged, let's say Jaehaerys, from what we've heard, said, "I must tell you because you're my heir," and he interpreted it as being, "This is one heir to the one king to the heir, and I'll just pass it on." Is that what's happened here? It's not clear, but yeah, uh, I will do a video on this because I think I've had so many people who are just querying, why don't you just tell everyone? And I think one answer here, I think there are many aspects to this, but one answer is that this would make the Targaryens look a little bit crazy. Oh, they're already there with their um, dragons. They're already there with a completely different culture. They're ruling everybody, thinking that they've got this kind of right to rule. If they added to that this, oh, we have to rule because of this great prophecy, that probably just makes them seem a little bit more entitled than they were. So I think that's one aspect. I'm happy if anyone's got an even better idea in the chat, then do let me know. Desert Storm being born Charlie11 saying afraid of being heretics. Yeah, I mean that's certainly possible. They had to play things down for the Faith of the Seven, so not talking about all of their own Targaryen exceptionalism is probably A thing, Andrew Kay saying it's an element of the prophecy that might be House of the Dragon only until given clarity. It might have been known in wider Targ circles in the text. Steffi L saying Viserys misinterpreted his Aegon dream too, it looks like. Yeah, he didn't seem to be the best at interpretation. Um, and Lisan Al Khaleb saying, I don't, maybe they just didn't want to cause panic. Yeah, that's entirely possible. And okay, lots of good ideas there. I think Andrew Kay saying Egg and all his siblings seem to know the prophecy in some fashion. Yeah, and Carl Karsnark saying every year the prophecy that doesn't come true would make the Targ look more foolish. Yeah, again. So I think both valid points, Andrew and Carl. I think better to keep it secret, keep it safe. I think that's probably fair. And Shmi saying, do the Targs have one side of the prophecy and the Green Seers have another? Again, yeah, good point. Jamie D373 saying, hi, Robert. Never managed to catch a live before, but I love listening back to them and all the videos. Thank you for the many hours of entertainment. Well, thank you. I hugely appreciate that. And welcome. If this is your first time watching a live stream, please, do get caught in. First of all, thank you for the super chat. Please do get engaged with the chat. There's some fantastic people there. Let's go to Madeline Tyrell-Dayne. Hope you and Dan are doing well. Shout out to, thank you. Shout out to Tom Glyn Carney for his stunning performance as Aegon. Aegon went from being my least favourite in season 1 to a character I emphasise with due to Tom GC's highly expressive portrayal. For me, the scene where Aegon spoke broken High Valyrian was a standout moment of the whole series. What do you think Aegon's future will be in the show? So I think this is interesting because in the book, for the next while, he's basically mostly comatose and I can't remember the exact phrase that they used, but it was something like 20 out of 24 hours he was out of it and couldn't contribute, and the rest of it he was still bedbound. Eventually he escapes from King's Landing, recovers on Dragonstone. He's still a broken man, but he is up and about and can talk and things like that. So what's the future for him in the show? I think they will probably keep a little bit of that going. I think that he will be seriously injured, possibly even for the rest of this season. The thing I'm most intrigued by is in the book, that works fine. At some point, he starts to come to and recover and get better. But when he starts to recover and get better on the show, what's he going to remember about what happened? Because in the book, what will he remember? Well, there was this big dragon fight, and he lost out. On the show, is he going to remember that Aemond Dracarys'd him to his face? Probably. So what's he going to have done with Aemond? Are they going to explain the fact that Aemond heads out and goes to Harrenhal by at least partly the fact that he knows that Aegon knows what he did and he just wants to not be there? So that's the extra twist we have, I think, in the show, is this the relationship between Aegon and Aemond is not going to be the same regardless. Okay, let's go to and that's it for my questions from my patrons about House of the Dragon. Now we're going to move on to wider A Song of Ice and Fire questions. But if you've got more House of the Dragon questions, please do drop them into the chat. King of Imps saying, hello, Robert. What is west of Westeros? It's come up before, and we know that Planetos is round, and it's implied that Alyssa Farman made it to Ashai. But is it a straight line? Is it possible there are other continents between Westeros and the far side of Essos, like a Planetos version of the Americas? Just as Essos broadly mirrors Asia and Sothorios mirrors Africa, it's my personal tinfoil theory that there may be large land masses to be explored beyond the Sunset Sea. So, what is west of Westeros is the question that Alyssa Farman asks. She gets the boat, steals the dragon eggs, sells the dragon eggs, gets a boat, the Sun Chaser, heads off west. That boat is last seen just keeping on going. It's a great boat. It's a really good boat. The other boats that are accompanying it cannot keep up. It's got lots of revisions, and she just keeps on going west, further than anyone's ever gone west. Her personally, never heard from again. Now, we do have one sighting of the boat again, Sun Chaser. The boat is spotted on Corlys Velarion's second great voyage. He goes to Ashai, right all the way on the far side, as far east as you can get, and or at least as far east as we've got on the map. And he goes to Ashai, and he sees a boat, an ancient boat that he is sure is the Sun Chaser. We don't hear that he meets Alyssa Farman or anything like that, but he sees the boat. And then he comes home, and that's it. That's all we get. And the kind of the implication is that somehow she's made her way. She headed west, and she kept going west until she came out the other side at Essos, at Ashai. So, what is west? I mean, I think from that we can say that it's not impassable. It's not that there is a way you can keep on going west and you can come back around to Essos. And if she'd carried on, she'd have ended up back in Westeros. I think we can say that that's true. There's no impassable route. Yes, it is a globe. Yes, all this makes sense. Might there be another continent to the west? George R. Martin's answer probably would be, we don't know. That's beyond the scope of what the Maesters understand and have recorded. I think in my headcanon, yeah, there probably is. Very broadly, we've got this mapped out as Westeros being Great Britain, Ireland, Europe-ish, Essos being Europe heading into Asia, the further east you go, Sothorios being sort of Africa. Very broadly, we're talking here, which seems to imply that if you go west from Britain/Europe, you will get to the Americas, whatever whatever continent we call that. So yeah, I think that's what's likely there, but George R. Martin has given us no evidence. It's not that I have no evidence. George R. Martin has given us no evidence either way, other than the fact that there must be a route through in order for the Sun Chaser to get all the way through. Chaos Ballerina. Alicent also touches her belly before taking the moon tea. Was it hinting that she was already pregnant? Also, like that they show Rhaenys tightening her belt before her suicide run contrasts with Daemon's. So on that last one, so Daemon in the future will do a suicide run, and he will deliberately not chain himself in, because he has decided the way that he's going to do this is leap from his dragon with his sword and just attack Aemond, who will have strapped himself in. So that's how he's going to do it. Whereas Rhaenys is basically, I'm staying here with my dragon. That's it. I'm strapped in. There's nothing else happening now. There's no other way of doing this. I thought it was a really good show. Don't tell. This is just literally right. Buckle up. We're going back in. That's the kind of the feel. Um, as for the first bit of what you were saying, Alicent also touches her belly before taking the moon tea. Was it hinting she was already pregnant? Well, possibly. Um, what they did want to show with that very clearly, I think, was the echo with Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra was given the moon tea by specially prepared personally by the Grand Maester. It's the same room that we get Alicent later drinking it. Again, the same kind of excuses. Oh, it's for a servant, and it's with the same person. It's Kristen Cole. So we're invited to see the echoes between those two characters. Is she actually pregnant? I think the point is that Alicent doesn't want to take any chances. Um, Constantine Tranos saying, will Rhaenyra earn the title Rhaenyra the Cruel on the show? In episode 4, she seems to embrace the ends justify the means drive. I don't think it's going to be quite that clear cut. The um, uh, what the people call her is not necessarily fair. What we've already seen is that I can't remember exactly what it was, but when we had the funeral procession with Prince Jacaerys, sorry, Prince Jaehaerys, then somebody calls out Rhaenyra the Monstrous or something along those lines, and that was not her fault in the slightest. So I think that we will see Rhaenyra the Cruel as being something that is said of her. But my experience of the show so far is that it's not going to be that straightforward. This is going to be probably not a deserved title. Erin's son X saying, "Hey Robert, forward to Game of Thrones and Harrenhal's curse. Does the curse telegraph Littlefinger's fate? Is he definitely horribly doomed?" Well, let's hope so. Yes, for those who missed the curse, um, every house that has owned Harrenhal has not only lost Harrenhal but been wiped off of the planet, basically. So this starts with House Hor, who have it to start with, and then we move through House Caheris. There's lots of different houses. I won't name them all. House Caheris, House Towers, House Lothston, House Went, pretty much as well. We everybody who owns it dies, and not just dies, but the house is wiped out. And the person who technically owns Harrenhal in the main story now is Littlefinger. Is this supposed to be foreshadowing? Yeah, I think so. I think it is. And even though he's never been there, I think he will get his destruction. And his house is him. His house will be destroyed with him. Um, let's go to DickCrabb'sSquire. Greetings. Um, I was reined in all weekend, so I binge watched Game of Thrones. A perfect way to spend the weekend. I was watching the season 2 episode with the riot in King's Landing when I noticed the actor who played Varys standing in the crowd. He can be seen for a split second just before the dung is thrown at Joffrey. I'm assuming he was probably used as an extra to fill the crowd out, since he is not actively in the scene, but he is dressed as Varys, having his arms bent and his hands tucked into his sleeves like he always does. Your thoughts? Well, I can't remember that, to be honest. It's been a long time since I watched season 2 of Game of Thrones. But in the book, Varys's responsibility or a knowledge or otherwise of the riot is an issue. There's a riot. Basically, Marcella gets sent off to Dawn. All the court goes down to the docks, and then all the court comes back up again, and there is a riot. And lots of things happen. On the show, then it seemed it was just like, a few people get sort of dragged off their horses. Sansa gets caught up in a really quite scary moment, but in the books, with so many extra characters there, the High Septon just gets ripped apart. We get half a dozen minor characters all disappear, presumed dead. And Jamie afterwards thinks, surely Varys should have known that was possible, but he didn't say anything. And surely Varys should have been. He wasn't there to start with, so he was staying well away from it. But is there a reason why he might have wanted it, even if he allowed it to happen? Or could he have prompted it to happen in some way? And he kind of links this in with Tyrell Lannister, who is missing. He's one of the people who's missing. And I answered this a few weeks ago, but the straightforward answer is that, yeah, he just is one of those people who got killed and all of his valuables taken from him, and then somebody realized that actually he was quite an important person, so we probably should hide the body. Probably that, but it's possible that Larys wanted to collect Tyrell for his own reasons, created a riot to cover his tracks, and maybe on the TV show, that was just a nod to that moment. Let's go with Commander Ray. If the books do indeed end with Bran as king of the 6 or 7 kingdoms, 2 questions. How does his story transition from being a tree wizard into one of becoming the king? And secondly, how will the system of governance be set up to prevent his death becoming another destabilizing succession crisis? It's extremely far-fetched that absolute monarchy becomes an elected monarchy, which seems the only way, unless Sansa has Stark children that can be placed in line for Bran's throne, but nothing seems remotely satisfying, and I love the Starks. Okay, so let's work off the assumption that Bran will become king, which happened obviously on the TV show. It was one of the 3 WTF moments that the showrunners say that they got from George R. R. Martin when he did his big handover meeting. And it does kind of fit in some ways, the things that we know about how George R. R. Martin started writing this whole story, but we can't take it as canon. So let's work with the assumption that Bran in the books does become king. How does the transition from Tree Wizard happen? Well, I think what they tried to show on the TV show was something like a great council. After the end of the war, after everything's destroyed, there's only a small number of nobles left in King's Landing, and they have to figure out who's going to be the king, because they don't want to change the system. We're going to have a king. And there, it became apparent that the Starks held the power. And you looked around, you can picture it. I think they were in the Dragon Pit. They had like the semicircle of them all there to discuss things. And you go, okay, so Bran is there, Sansa's there, Arya is there. We get a few extra characters alongside. We get so, I mean, I'm trying to remember all the characters who were there in that one, but at least 2 or 3 of the others were basically vassals to the Starks. So whatever anyone else said, who held the power there, it was the Starks. Now, it won't happen the same in the book, but this notion that there is some kind of great council at the end of all of this to decide who should be king does kind of fit with what we've already seen happen in 101, the Great Council of 101. The lords come together and decide who is king. And maybe they would hold that at Harrenhal again. Harrenhal's quite, as we know, weirwoody. So the idea that the Starks, who have emerged victorious at the end of this civil war, and this all being held at a very weirwoody kind of place, Bran being made king does kind of make sense. It does work, not because he's the Targaryen rule. And there's no justification of you're connected to the Targaryens, which that makes you king. This is just who are we going to elect king out of all of us? And that would allow Sansa to remain Lady of Winterfell. That bit I kind of get. What happens after Bran? Well, the boring and unhelpful answer, I think, is that I don't think George R. R. Martin is going to tell us what system they have set up, because I don't think we're going to get a 20 years later epilogue. And this is what happened, and this is where we're going to be, and this is exactly how they set up all the different structures. I don't think we're going to get that. So I think we're just going to be left with something like, and Bran is now the king. And we're left to wonder, what does that mean? It's not going to tie up nice. Everything going to be tie up really nicely. Let's go to a question from Lord Medici saying, 7 blessings, Robert and Dan. Do you have any clue on what is the basis that George R. R. Martin uses to select the names he gives to each character? I would say they fall into 4 categories: completely made up names like Tywin, Sansa, and Hoster, and nods to names from other fantasy worlds of Legendarium like Sir Gawain, Arthur Dayne, Arthur Dine, a city in Tolkien's Legendarium. Similar names to Middle Ages British, like Eddard is like Edward, Rickard is like Richard, etc., or just names that exist in our world, like Adam, Robert, Otto, Brandon, etc. Robert, of course, being an excellent name, no need to change it at all. Do you have any idea why one would choose to make up a name and choose an existing one for important characters? So, how did George R. R. Martin decide on the names for his characters? Well, rather wonderfully, we do actually have a video. You can hunt for it. I can't remember what the video title is, but you can find it. It's a Q&A with him and Robin Hobb, who's a really good friend of his and a fellow writer. And someone asks a question like this: how do you come up with the names? And he gives a good 5-minute answer to this. So I'll give you the highlights. The highlight number 1 is he says that he does actually have a collection of what to name your baby books. So he can just flick through books looking for inspiration, not just in English, but in lots of other. If he's in another country and he sees a how to name your baby book in another country, he will get that as well. So he has got a lot of that for his inspiration. But he said that what he was going for Westeros, he wanted the flavour of medieval England. That's his words. So yes, he has gone for names that feel quite medieval British. He does do a huge amount of, let's take a British-ish kind of name and just slightly tweak it. So Eddard for Edward, etc., etc. And then he wants the next thing he said was that he wanted to make sure that different ethnicities had different feels to their name, and he talked a little bit about the Valyrian names. They had to sound, I think he used the word exotic, and so there's a lot of that AE kind of sound and the S sounds. And then he finally said that he also wanted to go against the general advice of having main characters having clearly different names so as not to confuse your readers, because he wanted it to feel real. And if you go back through British history, you will find, what are the names of the kings? Well, there's lots of Henrys, there's lots of Edwards. Occasionally you'll get a Richard or something like that. And he wanted that. he thought it felt more real if you have lots of characters with the same name, hence there being lots of Brands, hence there being lots of Aegons, and that was deliberate on his part. But he said ultimately it's a matter of finding a name that feels right, and that sometimes he would have a character and he wouldn't name them for a long time because no name felt right. So I hope that kind of sort of explains his approach. It's yeah, he's not. It has to be said. He didn't say it here. I've seen him say it elsewhere. He's not a philologist like Tolkien. He doesn't um, go in deep about what the meaning of each bit of each word, each name is, which is something that Tolkien definitely did. But he does focus in on making sure that they are reflective, they feel real, they're reflective of culture, and also they speak to him about the character represented by that name. Corvus Codex saying, good evening, Robert and Dan. George R. R. Martin has spoken of show canon and book canon, but has yet to mention stage canon. In your readings and research, have you picked up on Martin's involvement with the writing of the play formerly known as Harrenhal? Will it be its own canon? So, for those who've missed this, there will be a stage play of the Tourney at Harrenhal. It is in active development. This isn't an HBO thing, so it's not a matter of we're waiting for a green light from HBO. This can go ahead whenever, really. He mentions this in his blog every now and then. He mentioned it a couple of blogs ago when he was saying that he's coming to the UK next month, I think, for an extended visit. He's got a lot of different things he's doing. He's going to go see the set in Northern Ireland for Duncan Egg. He's going to go to Worldcon, which is in Glasgow this year, and he's also going to spend some time in London. And one of the things he wanted to say was he was aware last year when he came to London and he met his editors, lots of people got excited that did this mean that Winds of Winter's on its way? And he just wanted to tell everyone to just calm down, just chill out a little bit. This is just if he's in town, it's just good business. You just meet your editors, you meet your publishers. It doesn't mean anything. It would be quite rude if he didn't. So that was the main thing he was saying. But he did mention briefly that he was also going to be talking to the writer and producer of this stage play, who is a guy called Duncan Macmillan, who is a well-respected playwright. And he also gave an update on timing. Last time he referenced it, he said he was hoping maybe possibly towards the end of 2024. Now he's saying at some point in 2025, and he's saying London again. So that makes me happy. It means that I'll be able to get to see it. Apologies for people elsewhere in the world, but I think the idea is that if it's a hit, then it would go on tour and it would go over to Broadway and it would go to Australia, it would go to various places. So it's still happening. It still is being developed. It's being pushed back slightly. What is his involvement? Well, he's not the lead writer on it, but he has been actively involved in it. So what does this mean in terms of canon? He's not said, but in my mind, he's probably thinking of it as being a bit like show canon. This isn't a book where he is the sole writer, so it's not part of book canon, but it's kind of separate. Now, I think that the dynamic will be slightly different here to how it is on the show, because on the show, then this is very much HBO have got the rights to do all of this, and they can, whoever the showrunners are, they can go off and do whatever they want. Here, however, the turning at Harrenhal is so dependent on George R. R. Martin revealing bits of information to the writer of that, then I, I think we can take it definitely as kind of for books semi-canon, but I think very broadly, if we imagine it for the time being as being a bit like show canon for something like House of the Dragon, set in that everything that will be on that stage play, I'm pretty sure George R. R. Martin has given the thumbs up for it to be on the stage play. Doesn't mean that it's going to be necessarily exactly what happens in the books, but he has given the thumbs up to it being on the stage play, and we know he will want it to be as close to the books as possible. But there will be some, as there is from book to screen, as there will be from George R. R. Martin's mind and what we've got from the books onto the stage. There will be some differences that have to happen regardless. So he's not said, but I think we will learn a lot from this when this comes out. Let's go to Lord Medici saying, we know that dragons don't have a clear biological sex and presumably cannot convey what gender they identify as. With this in mind, why is it that we refer to some dragons as female, like Vhagar and Syrax? Surely an identifiable sex and or gender is needed to assign gender-specific pronouns. P.S. Come on, England, it's coming home. I'm banning it's coming home, but yes. If you're a football fan, you'll know why I'm quite nervous and excited right now. Actually, which reminds me, before I answer this question, which reminds me, on Sunday, that I normally do a pre-show live stream at 10 o'clock by time. That's 11 o'clock Central European, 5 o'clock Eastern America. I'm going to have to do that one an hour later for urgent sports watching reasons. I apologize for that. This is a very rare opportunity, possibility of seeing my country winning a major international tournament. We probably won't. Spain are looking very, very good, but I will still do the live stream, but I'm just going to push it back by about an hour. But about dragon sex. So why do we refer to some as female? We get lots of dribs and drabs of information about all of this, but a dragon is generally referred to as female if they lay a clutch of eggs in world. The latest blog post, which I've mentioned already, George R. Martin gives a lot of dragon lore, and one of the things that he says is Septon Bath got much of it right, which we knew anyway. But one of the things that Septon Bath speculates is that dragons actually they can change their sex, so it's probably not right to talk about them as being as male or female. So it's a mystery. George R. R. Martin has emphasized, yes, these are creatures, but they're magical. So, in world, we go with, or characters in world go with, if a dragon has laid a clutch of eggs, they get called female. If a dragon doesn't, they generally get called male. Let's go to another question from Lord Medici saying, I've been thinking a lot about the nature and direction of the cognitive bond between a dragon and its rider. We know that dragons can respond to verbal instructions and that they're easier to control than when they've been ridden before, and or the dragon rider is more experienced. So far, they sound a lot like horses. Yep. I think that's probably a fair analogy. Can dragons be cognitively influenced by the dragon rider's psyche or vice versa? Okay, so again, we have this latest blog post from George R. R. Martin, which I think we can take as pretty good evidence of where his mind is on this at the moment. So we get this. They are individuals. They have personalities. These are dragons, and they often reflect the personalities of their riders, thanks to the bond they share. So, a dragon, if you're riding a dragon, your personality will often imprint on the dragon. Perhaps sometimes it might go the other way a bit as well. But George R. Martin goes on to say they don't care a whit about gold or gems, no more than a tiger would, unless maybe their rider was obsessed with the shiny stuff. And even then. So if a rider has a particular personality, that will get to a degree imprinted on the dragon. Now, when it comes to, say, Vermithorn and Silverwing, who had been ridden for a very long time by Charis and Alison, a married couple, when we get Vermithor killed in A Dance with Dragons, Silverwing mourns over the death of Vermithor. And the implication from what George R. R. Martin here says is that this is because Jaehaerys and Alison imprinted a bit of themselves into their dragons, their love for each other, and that has stayed with those dragons. So that's the kind of feel we're now getting from this. Tanya self-indulgent saying just a bit of love for the mods. Thank you very much. I hugely appreciate that. Yeah, give a little bit more love to the mods. Fantastic. Chaos Ballerina saying in Not a Blog, George R. Martin says that the dragons seldom wander and aren't nomadic. They find lairs and stay there. Meaning, if pre-Valyrian dragons visited Westeros, they had riders. Why? What were they doing? Why does history not remember them? Yeah, so this is probably the biggest thing that he says. There's a lot of stuff that we picked out so far, but this is probably the biggest thing, is that dragons left to their own devices would just stay where they are. I mean, they will roam around their local area, get food, etc., but they're not going to travel far. That's their kind of instinct. And so that's why we see on Dragonstone the dragons staying in their lairs. He says that they're okay if somebody builds something for them, like the dragon pit, then yeah, they'll stay there. But otherwise, they'll go find somewhere and then they'll stay there. They'll only go places if their rider takes them to places. So, what does this mean in terms of something else that George R. Martin said a long time ago, which was that way back in the mist of time, dragons flew over Westeros? Well, the clear implication, as you say, is that they flew, two things. Either dragons were in Westeros and then died out for some reason, or they were in Essos and were flown over by Valyrians or proto-Valyrians. So I don't think either makes huge amount of difference to the story that we have. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of thought exercise. Let's go to so Andrew K saying at times abrupt loyalty shifts even after dragons spending considerable time together. Makes me wonder if the bond can sometimes have a sinister aspect. Yeah, it's entirely possible. Adam Geets saying, are there any weirwood trees that we know of in Dawn? So how would if not, how would the children of the forest know to cut off the landmass of Dawn if they are not able to see through the trees there? Well, this is an interesting one because there were weirwood trees in Dawn. And then the first men came across and chopped them down. And it is now known by the children of the forest as the Empty Land. So there are no weirwood trees anymore in Dawn. Did that how did that affect their understanding of whether they could cut off Westeros from Essos. Well, there had been weirwood trees, so they would have been aware that that's where the people coming from. But also, I think we always have to remember that whereas, yes, you can have people seeing through weirwood trees, this is what Bloodraven said to Bran. Your sight will not be limited to your godswood. The singers carved eyes into their heart trees to awaken them, and those are the first eyes a new greenseer learns to use. But in time, you will see well beyond the trees themselves. So the idea is, if Bran theoretically can go through the weirwood network and not just see what one tree can see out there, which is what he seems to have seen from his first set of weirwood visions, but if he can move beyond that, then actually the absence of weirwoods in Dawn doesn't matter so much. Film Tram saying, do you think Dawn was less sandy back in the day as a result? Yeah, I think absolutely. I think it was deforested by the first men. That's, I think, all of my questions on A Song of Ice and Fire. I've got a few Lord of the Rings questions to go, though. Ranabe Mitra saying, I hope you're both doing well as the nation prepares for its coming home. I'm banning that phrase. A quick Lord of the Rings fun one from last week. Who wins in this dragon versus dragon battle? And Calagon the Black versus Balerion the Black Dread. So Balerion the Black Dread we all know, and Calagon the Black was the biggest and dragon in Tolkien's Legendarium way back in the First Age. Who wins between them? Well, we're not told all of the details about Ancalagon the Black, but Ancalagon was massive, absolutely massive. When it flew, then it blotted out the sun. When it fell from the sky, then it crashed into 3 mountains. So big was it. This is bigger by a long way than Balerion. We know Balerion is incredibly fierce, has got incredibly sort of hot flames. So Balerion's nothing to be messed with, but Ancalagon seems to be next level. Added to which, Tolkien's dragons are clever. Pardon me. They're clever. They can talk, they can think, they can reason. And that's not the case, as we've discovered with George R. R. Martin's dragons. They're quite intelligent, but nowhere near as intelligent as Tolkien's dragons. And Renabi Mita also asked about the Dagor Dagorath. Matt from Nerd of the Rings asked his followers this question. If the Valar with Mandos can revive Eärendil and Turin Turambar for the Dagor Dagorath, surely Morgoth can revive Sauron and Calagon and Glaurung as well. My personal headcanon says no, because Mandos controls the halls of the dead and he won't allow for such revivals to take place, especially for Morgoth. And what do you think? So Morgoth, Dagor Dagorath is the Ragnarok of Tolkien's world. Morgoth does return for it, and Turin fights Morgoth. So Morgoth will be back. Could others come back? I mean, personally, I think maybe, but the whole point here is that this is elf myth, religion, something along those lines. Christopher Tolkien kept it out largely of the Silmarillion. He didn't. It was not a bit of Middle Earth history. This was what the elves believed would happen in the future at the end of time. So I don't think we can keep it at the same kind of level as, well, this is definitely what's going to happen. This is just what the elves believe. And is what the elves believe true? Possibly. And if that is true, then this is something which is part of a ruse greater plan, and actually what the Valar wants and Mandos wants doesn't make huge amounts of difference. Reflective Rambling, picking up a question for April May, saying Helena's star necklace. When it's yanked off of her, she visibly changes her whole character. Is some of the jewelry magical? Well, it's an interesting one. She's, I mean, her whole character, does it change? I mean, I can see what you mean by that, absolutely. And she certainly seems more lucid after what happens with Blood and Cheese. Is that down to her necklace? I don't. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a magical necklace that gives her dragon dreams or anything like that. I think she gets them anyway. I think this is just um, uh, a cool prop. I think that's all I'm going to go with. So I don't think that she's got like magical jewelry. Erin Sun X saying, when did HBO release the title of episode 4? I learned 2 days later the title was The Red Dragon and the Gold. I think they released sort of soft released that the title was going to be a Dance of Dragons or something like that. That's certainly what I thought it was going to be before the episode aired. I can't remember where I got that from. Um, and then it's only afterwards that we discovered that it was actually called um, the Red Dragon and the Gold. Why? Because the the title was a bit spoilery. I think is we come from a position of knowing what happens in the book. We know that this is going to be a battle ultimately between Melis and Sunfire. Book readers, sorry, non-book readers wouldn't. Just normal show watchers wouldn't have known. And if they had an episode title about um, the Red Dragon and the Gold, it would be like, well, hang on a moment, we know which those dragons are, but surely Aegon's said he's not going to go out, so that might be a bit spoiler. I think that's all that happened there. Andrew K saying Vhagar and Melis spent considerable amount of time together via Alyssa and Balon. Vhagar and Caraxes spent considerable time at various points as well, and then wiped away by new bonds. Yes, so it'll be interesting to see whether the show plays up those bonds at all. We've not really seen Caraxes and Vhagar. You're right; they spent a lot of time together. Um, in particular, Lena, Daemon's second wife, rode Vhagar, and Daemon was riding Caraxes. So those two dragons were close and had whatever love there was between those two people. And we know that they're going to come together again at the end. So is that going to play into this? I don't know. I'd like to see it, but I'm not sure how easy it would be to show. Let's go to Martin S. I'd like to ask you how you view canonicity in fiction. My general view is roughly this. For a fictional work where there is mainly one author and mind behind it, is that author's vision is the primary canonical source of the story. Things added to the franchise by other writers, whether it be in adaptations from game companies or other third party, are not equally authoritative, especially long term, where there may be others getting involved. They are never equally future-proof as the core story written by the main author. For instance, if another director made an adaptation of The Hobbit, I think we could be almost positive that Gandalf, Bilbo, and Thorin would be included. The odds of Tauriel being included in such a hypothetical future adaptation of The Hobbit are realistically significantly lower. Well, I would agree definitely with that. The adaptations are made of the original, not of an earlier adaptation. In terms of canonicity, I think it's probably worth pointing out. I mean, this as a term, it's often used for sort of religious texts and the like. In terms of fiction, the best or clearest early example of this was with the works of Arthur Conan Doyle, the Sherlock Holmes stories, where there were fan groups who decided on what the canon was, because there were lots of people who were saying, "Oh, this is Sherlock Holmes, that's Sherlock Holmes," and they were saying, "No, we need a line here. What's the real Sherlock Holmes?" And they said, "Okay, there are 56, I think, short stories and 4 novels. That's the canon." Which is fine, and that's what has been stuck with as the canon ever since. However, that is a little bit confused by the fact that Arthur Conan Doyle himself, while he was alive, did write more than that. He wrote a few. He wrote a surprising amount of stage plays, or had an input into a surprising amount of stage plays that featured Sherlock Holmes. He wrote some other short stories which weren't part of the collections, but for charity, for example, things like that. And they included Sherlock Holmes, and they were written by Arthur Conan Doyle, but they haven't been included in the canon. Now, is that fair or right? Well, I'll leave that up to you to decide. My general take is that I like what has happened with Tolkien, which is that the word canon is not really used for Tolkien. I mean, it's often used by people when they're discussing Tolkien, but in terms of the key Tolkien aficionados, that we go with the word that Tolkien himself used, which was legendarium. And what that means is that we're not just saying it's just the things which were written by him and published in his lifetime, in which case we've got 2 novels and 2 collections of poems. Not the Silmarillion, not Our Finished Tales, not anything like that. Instead, we go with legendarium, and we say, okay, we include the Silmarillion in this because clearly that was stuff that he wanted published. Then we also add in the History of Middle-earth, the edited collections of his wider writings by Christopher Tolkien. We add in all of these extra things that are definitely from him, even if some of them contradict each other. That is part of the legendarium. And we, as fans of Tolkien, get to work our way through and say, and decide which version kind of hangs together best, and how does that work. And we discuss these things, and it's actually not a pistols at dawn kind of moment. It's okay, so my take on the nature of orcs is this. Yours is that. Tolkien had, depending on how you count them, 4, 6, maybe even more different definitions of what an orc is. Is an orc a corrupted elf? Is an orc a corrupted human? Is an orc an inanimate object magically made animate? Whatever. There are lots of these different things at different stages of his work. He had these different ideas. And I love the idea that we can have a legendarium which includes all of this and treat people as grown up and say, you know what, let's just discuss this as a creator's whole amount of work that he's produced on this. And let's not just get too worked up about all of these minor details. So I prefer that. I think that works well for Tolkien because he did have the attitude of his world. He never stopped creating it. He, even up to almost his deathbed, he was changing bits, tweaking things, adding new stuff, things that we think of as probably being pretty static. The nature of Galadriel and her journeys and how she became the person that she was changed so many times. And Tolkien never said exactly, well, this is the one we're going with now. That wasn't the way that he worked. Mark Sheets is saying Gil-galad is the son of Fincon. No further discussion. There is a discussion, as you well know, but I would agree with you. Okay, let's go with a question from Johnny Seriani. While re-listening to The Two Towers, I noticed an interesting phrase about Saruman's furnaces and how they were red, blue, or venomous green. Do you think this might be the inspiration for wildfire in A Song of Ice and Fire? I mean, George R. R. Martin takes a huge amount of inspiration from Tolkien. Even in that blog post that we've been talking about, he refers to Tolkien as the master. Um, he's a massive fan. Here, my guess is no. The inspiration for Wildfire, George R. Martin has said, is Greek fire. So this is not. I don't think he got this one from Tolkien. Let's go to Andrew Biederman saying, "Hello, Robert. The population of the visited parts of Middle-earth is unimaginably low at the end of the Third Age. West of the Misty Mountains, there are maybe a few thousand of the Free Peoples? Bree, the Shire, the Havens, Rivendell, and the Dwarves of the Blue Mountains. It doesn't seem that there are constantly roving bands of orcs or goblins and trolls. So what keeps the population so low and no more villages popping up?" I mean, it's a good question. The well, there's a couple of answers to this. The first is that it's not quite as depopulated as you might think. Tolkien didn't say exactly how many hobbits there were, but you can find a number of estimates out there. 1 million is probably fair for the size of it, for the population density that he seems to be talking about. That it's not just teeny tiny village. We imagine this as being, well, Hobbiton seems to, I don't know how many people live in Hobbiton, maybe 100 at most. It's not quite like that. There are a lot of hobbits. And so it's not as depopulated as it sometimes seems. But then the other bit of the answer is that we get a whole. There are trolls in the troll shores out there. There are wolves. There are indeed orcs and other baddies which sometimes get out from the Misty Mountains. So there are monsters out there. There's also things like the Long Winter, which happened a few years before the events of the Lord of the Rings, which did kill a lot of people. And we sometimes underestimate how, in that kind of society, how dependent they are on having reasonable seasons. If you just get a really bad winter, then it can kill thousands. So yes, population was largely wiped out. The kingdom of Arnor was largely wiped out by the campaigns of the Witch King. Um, that meant that there were large empty spaces, which wolves and trolls and the like often were roaming around. The Shire was largely protected, but the elves, who also had bits of those lands, were very slowly dwindling and heading off to the west. So, and there were occasional natural disasters like the long winter. So, um, maybe in time it would have slowly increased, but that's the reasons that Tolkien gives us. Um, Let's go to Benjamin Newman saying, "Hi, Robert. I'm a new patron and here mostly for your Tolkien commentary. I have some thoughts about Frodo, Gollum, and the Ring, which I'm curious to hear your take on. I've seen a number of takes on this question. Whether on the slopes of Mount Doom, Frodo uses the ring to curse Gollum or otherwise seal his fate, directly causing Gollum's subsequent fall into the crack of doom and saving the quest." And it seems the most common answer is that up to that point, Frodo has merely been talking about using the ring, but at that moment, he finally actually does so. That doesn't seem right to me. Tolkien's magic system is so soft that it's easy to miss, but I think that Frodo has been using the ring as the ring from the moment that Gollum first promises in The Taming of Smeagol. This use of the ring continues through books 4 and 6 and weaves a tight narrative net whose implications are often overlooked. Okay, so what's going on here? Yeah, you're right. I did have a video up for a while about the fact that Frodo makes Gollum promise on the ring that he will not harm them. And he promises it basically on his life on the ring. And when he does do that, he breaks his promise. After that is when Gollum, shortly after that is when Gollum falls in and dies in the Cracks of Doom. And the thought is that Frodo used the power of the ring to be cursing Gollum, effectively. Now, I think there's definitely an element of truth to this. I think you're very right. Tolkien had a very soft magic system. We're not supposed to see all of this. But I'll also read out from a letter that Tolkien wrote about what happened at the very end. I do not think that Frodo's was a moral failure. At the last moment, the pressure of the ring would reach its maximum. Impossible, I should have said, for anyone to resist, certainly after long possession, months of increasing torment, and when starved and exhausted. Frodo had done what he could and spent himself completely. And Tolkien goes on to basically say that what Frodo did was he managed to get himself and get the ring in a position in which it could be destroyed, even if he himself could not do the destruction, could not destroy it personally. And this is the general accepted understanding, is that this is an intervention by Eru as much as anything else. And the natural extension of who Gollum is as a person, and his burning desire for the ring, and an element of this curse that is there, that Gollum himself had sworn on the ring and was therefore cursed because of it. So all of those things kind of mix in together. And I think that the curse is a thing. I wouldn't use the word curse myself, but I think that Gollum swore something and broke it, and the power of the ring therefore had an impact in that moment. Moon saying, "Hi Robert, I have a silly Lord of the Rings question, which I would love to hear your thoughts on. What would happen if the ring was put around a toe or an ear? Would that give the same effect as wearing the ring normally on a finger? Or if one were to swallow the ring in event of capture to prevent the ring from being found, what would happen in that case? Most people would be okay if they swallowed a non-toxic, non-magical ring, so I wouldn't be worried about the medical component, but would love to hear your thoughts." So if it were worn on a toe or an ear, I think, yes, it would be the same as a finger. I don't see any particular difference there. As for swallowing the ring, this is quite an interesting one, because the ring, I think I did a video on this quite recently, actually. The ring's kind of awareness of what's going on and its power to kind of manipulate events around itself is quite strong. So it is aware of what you're about to do. There's this great example when Gandalf's first of all telling Frodo about the ring, and Frodo says, "We should just destroy it. We should just, why don't we do it now?" And Gandalf says, "Well, go on then, destroy it. See what happens." And so Frodo pulls out the ring, and this is all like beautiful show don't tell from Tolkien. He pulls out the ring, and we kind of like see it from his perspective. He's like, "Yeah, actually, it's quite a pretty ring, isn't it? It's quite nice. I mean, why should I destroy it?" But then he like gets up this strength of will, and he reaches up to hurl it into the fire, thinking that would destroy it. And then he goes, "Well, hang on, what? I didn't do that. It's in my pocket. How did it get into my pocket?" And I think that if you were about to do something which potentially harm the One Ring, it would stop you. That is its control. But at that point, Frodo hadn't had the ring for huge amounts of time. It hadn't got huge amounts of control over him. That's the power it already had at that point in time. and it had the power to be trying to change owners. It would expand or contract to slip off somebody's finger. It did that with Gollum. It escaped Gollum when it thought, "Hang on, I've been here under the Misty Mountains for 500 years. We're not going anywhere, are we?" And so it slipped off of Gollum's finger. When Isildur was taking it up to Elrond, and we know what Elrond would have done, it slipped off of Isildur's finger. It's not often mentioned, but Bilbo says, "Actually, you know what? A few times it's come off my finger as well. I had to keep an eye on it just to make sure I didn't lose it." And so Frodo, this is why Frodo puts it on a chain around his neck, incidentally, because he knows Bilbo's told him, just you have to make sure this doesn't escape. So if you were trying to destroy it or do something like that, then there's a chance that it would just not let you. Swallowing it, I mean, I don't know. Maybe if it thought that staying in your possession was better than whoever was about to take it from you, then yeah, maybe it would allow you to do that, and then it would pass through you as normal. I can't imagine it would do you any good, but yeah, that's what would happen. Okay, that's my questions from my patrons. So let's have a quick flick through the chat. Martin S. How large is the difference in social class and standing between Frodo and Sam? Mostly they're just friends, but sometimes the difference is seen. Um, yeah, I mean it's probably quite hard to sort of uh, explain this to a non-English audience. As they, it kind of the social class system in this country, which is thankfully weakening over time. It is still there, but Frodo and Bilbo were the sort of the uh, uh, upper classes. They didn't have a job, and they had lots of servants and people looking after them. Sam was from the working classes, so there was a social gap. Now that didn't mean they couldn't be friends, but it did mean that it was always very obvious who was in charge. And that similarly was the case for Merry and Pippin as well. If you read read the story, it doesn't come across quite like that in Peter Jackson's films, but when you actually read it, you'll see they're basically giving Sam orders because they're also from this upper class. They're coming from the Tooks and the Brandybucks are some of the top families in the Shire. Yeah, he's very much working class, and he doesn't wish to. I mean, he wouldn't presume to do anything above and beyond what he's asked to do. He's just grateful to be uh, coming along and helping. Um, Andrew K, did I answer Stringer Studios super chat earlier? I'm not sure. Let me just quickly flick back and see whether I can find it. I've got Simon Schaffner, which I haven't answered yet, saying George R. Martin says Damon is 50-50 villain hero. You've said he's softened in the House of Dragon, but the domestic violence makes it hard to root for him, even though he's compelling. What heroic aspects do you see in his character? Yeah, it's not that so much that George R. Martin says he is. It says that some viewed him as a hero, some as the worst kind of villain. Now, um, I think they've made him harder this time around. What they did do, certainly in season one, was when I say they softened his character a bit, what there were some things that I thought looked pretty likely to be him. So, for example, the death of Lenore looked pretty likely to have been a Damon thing. The Similarly, the deaths at Harrenhal, the deaths of How Strong, they made this was Laris on the show. That was a decision to make it Laris rather than Damon, and they played up. Matt Smith talked about this quite eloquently. Is that he played up the fact that he loved his family. He loved Rhaenyra, he loved Viserys, and they were like that was his weak spot. We didn't see that at all in the book. We didn't see a hint that he had a weak spot. It was just very much, if you looked at all of his actions in the book, pretty much all of his actions, and you would say each one of those gets him closer to power, until the very end. Um, and if you just went with that mindset of what action gets you closer to power, then that is normally what Daemon did. So they softened his character, certainly for season 1, but he is supposed to be um, a charismatic leader that you think, yeah, this guy would make a great king, make a great leader. However, you also are supposed to look at them and be repulsed by what they do. That's the kind of the way that George R. R. Martin has written it. So was that the super chat I missed? I think it probably was. If it wasn't, mods, just shout and let me know. Let's go to Caius Ballerina. Mark Shisa, would the ring have the same power over a Valar? I mean, it's an interesting question. I think that they did not want the ring in the Undying Lands, because they saw the power of the ring, but the power of the ring had Sauron's power in it, which was the power of a Maya, and that's one notch below the Valar. So I think the answer is no, it shouldn't have done, but that didn't mean that they weren't wary of it. Balerian Fire saying, "You rock." Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Tanya Self-Indulgent saying, "From my dwarf-loving heart, why did the first elves hunt the first dwarves? Was Aula forbidden from telling them about his children sleeping in Middle-earth? Yavanna knew about them. Was it a secret from everyone else?" Yes, it was a secret. He didn't tell anyone. He eventually told Yavanna, but that's it. Basically, I think he was a bit embarrassed as well, that he got a bit too excited about creating things. He created the dwarves. Why did the elves hunt the dwarves? I mean, we have to remember that the stories are written by the elves. The stories that we get are written by the elves, not the dwarves, and they just, I mean, they had similarly bad views of humans when they arrived as well. The elves do not come, when you actually dig into it, the elves do not come across very well. We have in our minds with the elves this kind of Peter Jackson ethereal kind of what wonderful creatures they are. Back in the First Age and earlier, no, not at all. Agree, we would. Okay, so this is picking up the Stringer Studios question. Apologies for not picking this one up earlier. Saying, sorry if this was covered, just joining. My question is, Daemon is loyal in his own way, his own code. Is Aemond the same, or did he want Aegon to die or be king? Yeah, we sort of covered it, but happy to talk about this here. Not George Martin, the showrunner and the writers are clearly trying to play up the link between Daemon and Aemond, making us wonder for both of them, how much do they want the throne for themselves? The Daemon says he's loyal in his own way. I think it's for us to try and work out whether he really is. The attacking Rhaenyra in his dream thing is supposed to be his subconscious, and is that what he really wants, is the question. And the implication is maybe he did want that. Aemond, did he want Aegon to die? And did he want to be king? My interpretation, I asked in the chat earlier, and it was I sort of yes or no. Yes, did he mean to kill Aegon? No, he didn't. It came out like 70-30. 70% of people thought that, yeah, he probably did. So, and I think that kind of fits with my feeling. You could, and maybe they will at some point, come out with this justification for Aemond, which we might say, oh, maybe he delayed coming out with Vhagar because he thought that if he'd arrived at the same time as Sunfire, then Melies would have just turned around and gone away. Maybe he will say, you know what? The only way that Melies was going to let go there was if I did it for Charis. Maybe, but that was the third betrayal he did there with that Dracarys, and he's shown absolutely, when he was there, he showed absolutely no signs of contrition. He was there walking up to the dead body, pointing at it, walking away. There was no there were no tears. My brother, what have I done? I think it's pretty clear that he knew what he was doing and he was okay with the implications of it. Martin S. There's always a chance that the One Ring in Valinor could have corrupted some elves and caused some new kinslaying or similar nastiness. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's that something that they were very aware of was that Valinor, Undying Lands, is not eternally perfect and incorruptible. You just have to look back to see what happened with the Silmarils to see actually evil came in. And it could again. So they were very, and this is why with the One Ring, it was like, no, it's not coming here. You can deal with it. Partly this was the letting people grow up and sort out their own mistakes, but also they didn't want this actively powerful evil thing coming into their land. Ranabin Mitra, did I cover the fact that Ryan Condal backtracked Geeta Patel's comments about those 3 eggs becoming Danny's eggs? I haven't. So for those who missed this, I did a video about this. The director of the episode, whichever episode it was, we're talking about 3 maybe, when those dragon eggs got sent off with Rhaena over to the Vale. There were 4 dragon eggs there. And the director said, we were all very excited on set because we're all big Game of Thrones fans, and 3 of those are Danny's eggs. And so this led to huge amounts of uncertainty about what this might mean, and a clarity that we're talking about the 2 canons, show canon and book canon. In show canon, yeah, fine, they can do that. I don't think that's the case in book canon. Ryan Condal has since then said, I mean, that's certainly in one. It was quite an interesting way of phrasing it. It was something like, in one set of events, that could be Danny's eggs. In another set of events, it could not be Danny's eggs. So, is that? I mean, that's a sort of a rowing back a little bit on it. It has to be said, in a way which wasn't a slap down to the director. That's my interpretation, is that I suspect that the message got through to them while they were filming that yeah, these could be Danny's eggs, and then everybody got really excited, and it came out, and then Ryan Condal saying, well, we didn't mean it exactly like that. We wanted you to think maybe this was, but it's not 100% canon that's what it is. I think what I would take from that is that in any set of events, 3 of those, in order for there to be that confusion amongst the production team, 3 of those eggs have to survive as eggs through to the end. Of those 4 eggs, at least 3 have to survive through to the end and probably make their way over to Essos. Otherwise, that confusion wouldn't have happened. Right, I think with that, I'm going to start drawing this to a close. So, a reminder about Sunday. The normal pre-show live stream is going to happen, but it will happen 1 hour later than usual for football watching reasons. Apologies. This doesn't happen very often, but England made it to a final and I want to watch it. So that will happen, but it's going to be 1 hour later. I've got a video, a Lord of the Rings video coming out tomorrow. I think that might be about the One Ring. I can't remember which one I scheduled. So I've got that coming out and a breakdown of the Battle of Rook's Rest. So lots of things to be looking forward to. But I will see you again on this channel on Sunday. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you soon.